Good morning, everybody. This is going to take a minute.
Morning.
Morning. Good morning. Okay, let's just give everybody a second to get in the door, so to speak. I just want to take a moment to say something about this very peculiar, you know, business with people coming in Zoom. In the past, I was able to say no password necessary, no waiting. I could even say people can get to the class before me. And then things kept changing. Suddenly, I wasn't allowed to do all of that. I had to have either a password or the waiting room. I didn't want you guys to have to deal with passwords. So then I was stuck with the waiting room. And then I figured out, if I get to class in the first minute, I could turn off the waiting room. And that was beautiful. That was the solution. And all of a sudden, just the last couple days, they don't let me turn off the waiting room. So I was like, oh no, I don't know if you recall this, but every now and then, I hope this didn't happen to anybody here. People would be locked out for a half an hour. We'd be so involved in the class, I wouldn't even know someone came late and was trapped in the waiting room. Purgatory. Which is really an odd one. So at least today, now, just the last couple days, I can't turn the feature off, but I discovered the doorbell. It's very funny. It sounds just like a doorbell.
The chime that goes ding, and somebody answers the group.
So at least now no one should be trapped, especially since you guys could hear the chime also. So here we are. So listen, I want to tell you what I've got going today. I'm pretty excited because this is the 5th class, and in a lot of ways, the first 4 classes is just, a lot of prep to actually make anything that feels, real. And last class, you might recall, we hit classic tweening very, very hard, which took some time, and I didn't feel like I'd covered enough really to ask for homework, so I canceled the homework, suggested people practice on their own. But I know a few people really enjoyed the last exercise, which I hope you guys remember was very psychedelic, very I'm looking at the waiting room is what's going on here. Kind of really wild, those objects going around and chasing each other around the screen. But in a way, though, that is kind of standard motion graphics in a way, because they were graphic elements. They weren't characters. It wasn't, Mickey Mouse running around. It was just shapes, graphic elements. So in a large part, motion graphics are made of elements like that. Of course, in motion graphics, it would include a lot of text, because it's usually selling something. But I know most of you, of course, you want to do character animation. I think some of you are very flexible, what kind of animation you want to do. But I would bet that the majority is interested in character animation. So I want to start moving toward it. We've covered frame by frame animation, which I hope people don't forget. It will be returning throughout the semester. So that's good. But frame by frame was the traditional road. I think a couple of you have taught yourself a certain amount of animation in your past, and it was probably frame by frame. Today we're going to discuss that a little bit. Then we moved into tweening. There are 3 kinds of popular tweening. Just want to make sure I didn't lock anywhere. 3 kinds of popular tweening. We started with shape tweening. And, it was cool because it's sort of like surprising that you could do something that elaborate, have a square turned into a circle with fairly little work. But, how useful it is debatable. Things just don't change shape. Just want to take a quick peek. I've been neglecting chats a bit too much. Daniela, I see your camera's broken. I understand. I won't hold it against you. What can you do? For the record, everybody, though, if your camera's not broken, you have to have it on. If you have some other good reason, you could turn it off. If you don't turn the camera on and have not already let Tiffany know why, because she had a list for me, so I'm not going to complain a lot. But if you've not let us know why and your camera's off, I mark you absent. Because there are evildoers out there who just log in and leave and think they're going to pass. or learn something, you know, which I'm not going to allow. And frankly, I don't want to be alone, even with the few of you who are rather good company. I want everybody who can be. If your camera's broken, let me know. Let Tiffany know. Let one of us know. You're fine. Okay. Back to what I was talking about. So frame by frame is inescapable. You know, it's going to have to keep returning. Shape tweening, yeah, you know, I don't know. It's very, very cool, but to be honest with you, I don't really use it all that much. There's two kinds of tweening that follow it. One is called classic tweening, my personal favorite, the one we're going to hit hardest. Classic tweening, the one we started already. The other one's called motion tweening. It's not my favorite, but a lot of people love it, so we are going to include it this semester. They're all a little bit different. Thing about classic tweening that I love is it gives you so much freedom. Technically, it's a little bit more challenging than the others at first, but it lets you change tint very easily when you get the hang of it, so things can change color. It lets you change, does great things with rotation, which we often need. Brightness, how light or dark an object gets. It's just the most flexible. It does all kinds of things, including easing, which we're going to explore a little bit today, which is making things not move at a constant speed, but speed up, slow down, without frame by frame. So I want to hit all that quite a bit. Now the other thing is I want to slowly move from very 2D objects, barely objects, shapes, squares, circles, whatnot, to dimensional objects or objects that imply dimension. We're not ready for people yet, you know, but we're getting there. Today, I would like to get to an animation, which is the cube bouncing project. So let me show you my handout. I know you guys looked at it, but it always makes, you know, it's kind of grounding. So here we are, we're back here. And I do want to point out something quickly, especially to Windows users. I want to give you a peek at something. At the bottom on the homepage, under today's handout, there's three things, you know, under the link to today's handout. There's a new thing called Class 10 Assets, we'll come to in a minute. There's an old thing about Adobe CC. I have more to say today. But this one, I just want to give you a peek at first. This is just for people using Windows. I think half you guys are on Macs and half you guys are on Windows. This is very much for the Windows people. I'm going to be supplying assets now and then this semester. If any of you took MMP100 with me, I used assets in that class all the time. What are assets? It's when someone delivers. Gee, Tiffany, I think I got to give control of the waiting room. I could make you a host also, and I think you'd be able to do that for me. I got to figure that out. Exactly how to do that. Good idea. I've been coming back to, bear with me, assets. So let's say you're working somewhere. I have these friends right near where I live here who do the Google animations that you sometimes see on the Google search page, but they don't draw them. They don't have anything to do with the concepts. In fact, they don't leave the house. They get the assets emailed to them. So it's like, oh yeah, we're commemorating some famous violin player. So we're sending you the drawing of the violinist, her violin, the background, all the parts. Here's the concept, or maybe a little storyboard. You guys make it. So those are assets, all those drawings. They're the animators. They're not the people who draw in this case. You know, let's say you needed sound or the rest of it. Again, that might be delivered to you as assets. Because the assets are going to come as a compressed file. We're going to use one today, right? So I want to say something about it. Let me just skip to this part about using zip files. The kind of assets I'm going to deliver to you end in .zip. They'll have names like Class5 assets, .zip. You know. If you're on a Mac, you'll see me download the assets, just copy the way that I do it. It's a tad easier for Macs. But if you're on Windows, I want to point something out. Zip files take all kinds of parts and compress them into one unit. It's often one folder with parts. Have you ever noticed you can't email a folder? Right? You can't. You know, so if there's 20 things in that folder, what are you going to do? You're going to send 20 attachments? That's a drag. You just want to send the folder. But what you can do is compress the folder. And a lot of people compress it and they make what's called a zip, .zip. So I'll be giving you folders, but they're going to be zipped. Now in Windows, they sometimes use RAR. So there's a choice, .zip or .rar. I really don't know if people call it a RAR. But I use zips. So here's where the problem begins, and it's easy to fix. On a Mac, you can't use the zip file unless you unzip it, which is perfect. On Windows, to be nice, you could actually use it without unzipping it, which I don't even understand. In other words, you're pulling stuff out of a shrink-wrapped, freeze-dried file. Thing is, it doesn't always work. It really doesn't always work, not for the kind of elaborate stuff that we do. It probably works for text files, but not for what we do. So you can't, you Windows people, I wag my finger, just kidding around, you have to do what's called extract. So for you, unzipping is extracting. But basically, when you download the zip with me, Windows people, you're going to right-click it, and you're going to choose Extract All. You might be on different versions of Windows. It might just say Extract or something similar, but I'm expecting Extract All. That's the same as just unzipping. You get a regular folder like you used to. You could throw out the zip file. Once it's extracted, you're free. You could use my parts. What you're going to use, I got very cool things for you today. I just want to come back for a minute. For those of you who might still be waking up, those instructions, if you want them, are here. It's called Windows, Zips, and Extensions. Guys, listen, I always like getting the boring stuff out of the way early. So right now I'm talking about this little section here about using zip files. So Windows people, at some point you might want to look at this. I'll do my best to describe it today live. I just want you to know the instructions are easy for you to get. Can I back up to something? I'm kind of going out of order. Another problem I often have in mixed classes, some people on Mac, some people on Windows, is extensions. You know, you're on a Mac and you're working on a JPEG, say you're in Photoshop. I think most of you know some Photoshop. The JPEG is myphoto.jpg. Sometimes you're on Windows and it just says my photo. For us, that's a really big problem. Hang on a second there. Someone's at the door. Oh, it drives me crazy. All right. Back to where we were. Hey, by the way, everybody, class starts at 9. Anyway, so about extensions. When you're doing multimedia or animation or video, you might have 3 files with the same name but different extensions. Let's just say you're doing a movie about the president. Let's just say, right? So you got yourself trump.jpg because you need that photo. And then you're making a movie called trump.mov or trump.mp4. And maybe you're making animation. We got trump.fla. If your extensions are turned off, you don't see FLA. You don't see JPEG. And it gets really confusing. So I just want to say something to Windows people. If you'd like to see the extensions, that they're not hidden from you, you're going to follow these instructions right up here. You want to get to File Explorer Options. 4 steps. Can't help you much because I don't have Windows here. Tiffany, this looks pretty right, doesn't it? This is what we were using back in the lab, you and I.
The zip?
No, the part about the extensions.
Oh.
So anyway, I'm going to move forward. I want to put you on the spot.
That looks like the way we did it in the class.
I tweaked it a couple times back when we were in the labs. Each time we learned a little bit, so it should be pretty close. The only thing is, like I said, you're not all on the same Windows operating system, so it might be slightly different. The idea is you definitely want to find File Explorer options and uncheck this feature. It's going to make you happier, not essential, right? So listen, guys, listen, I do want to say a couple other things before we get moving. One, I do need you to come at 9. I want to tell you that I wake up at 6, so I've had a couple cups of coffee by the time you come. Some of you guys don't hear the first 15 minutes of class because inside you're still dreaming about, I don't know, drinks with umbrellas, and beautiful beaches and palm trees. You know, you haven't quite woken up yet. I don't know if any of you are getting up at 5 to 9. Can't blame you. But don't come at 5 after 9 or 10 after 9. You can't blame the subway anymore. All right. I'm going to get back to it. All right. For anyone who was late and you're on Windows, you have to make the time to read this, right? On your own. It's about things that are relevant to Windows mostly. Mac people don't bother with this. Okay. Now, I would like to say one thing you can do while I'm talking. There's 2 ways to get today's assets. So if you're looking at my screen, you notice right under today's handout, there's a little star, an asterisk, and it says Class 10 assets. Oh, that should say Class 5 assets. Oops. I'll fix that on our break. Oops, sorry guys. But you can also get them just from the handout. So some of you might have actually done it. I don't know. Here's today's handout. So this is the usual stuff, and it says new, get our assets, and this is the link. Why don't you join me now if you haven't done it already? Doesn't matter which one you click, the one that's misnamed Class 10 on the home page, or this one, and I'm going to do it. So as soon as you click either one, pull down the menu from the home page, or come here, click this, you're going to see it start to download. A little arrow just pointed down to the bottom, because I'm in Chrome. And I want to say a little bit about what to do once it's downloaded. Guys, listen closely, okay? Even if you're still waking up, right? If you're on a Mac, this is what you do, right? If you're on a Mac, don't click the little arrow with the menu next to it. Click right on the name of the downloaded file. Do you see it in the bottom left? If you don't, you have to tell me. If you don't answer, I assume it's a go. Right, if you're on a Mac, just click the name of the downloaded file once it's downloaded. And what it's going to do, which is kind of very convenient, it opens your download folder. I'm sorry, I have so much extra stuff in here. I want to delete this and do it again so no one's confused. Give me a minute. So Mac people, you'd click it. You'd quickly see a little animated arrow showing you that it downloaded to this bar. Mac people, you just click the name of the downloaded file, and it does 2 things. It takes you to download. It unzips this the zip. You throw it out. Once it's unzipped and you see a folder, that's what we all want, right? There's animate files in there. Now Mac, Windows people, let me talk to you. You click it, you download it, right? Then you open downloads yourself manually. I imagine you could do it from down here, and if I'm wrong, please tell me. It's okay, right? Once it's here, I would click that little arrow. It doesn't say show in Finder on Windows, but it might say show folder or something like that, right? So you can get to downloads quickly. If you have a better way to get to downloads, that's cool too, right? But you get to downloads. And when you're there, this is the point you need to extract. You have to trust me on this, right? Because I don't want to waste time half an hour from now when some of you are like, oh, my file doesn't work, and it's going to be for anyone who ignored me. Now, just don't have time for it. Excuse me. I'm really doing this for everybody's benefit. Give me a second. I pulled my cord out. Right? So what you do is it's downloaded, find that, control click it, right click it in Windows land. So you get the menu. Now on your computer, I'm on a Mac. On your computer, choose extract or extract all. That's going to turn it into a folder like the Mac people also have. Extract or extract all. All right. I'm hoping that's kind of easy. You know, it's strange. Like I've seen this, couple students showed it to me, and it was all a little different. That's what's making me think people are not on the same Windows operating system. But you do have to extract it. We're going to have to fend for ourselves a little bit because what we want is the folder. I'd like to say something about that folder once you have it. You know, if you're in the habit of leaving stuff in downloads, it's not a good habit. I'm not going to torture you though, right? But one really should not leave stuff in there. It's like leaving all your mail in your mailbox. You know, the physical one, putting your head in there to read the mail. It's kind of weird, right? You should take it out and put it in a normal place where you like to keep your folders. Do you put them on the desktop? Do you put them in documents? You know, wherever you like to put them. I'm going to work on the desktop, clean it up later. So I'm going to take my folder here and drag it to the desktop. Now, give me a second here, just because I have to do a quick thing. I want to make sure that my desktop doesn't already have one of those. Nope, it doesn't. All right. So I'm going to drag it to, since I have the convenient bar on the left, I'm just going to drag the unzipped folder, the extracted folder, to my desktop. I don't need downloads anymore. I'm just going to go to the desktop and find it. It's called Class5, 2D Class5 Assets, and open that up. All right. How are you guys? That's a lot of words for something simple. I know some of you guys are kind of computer experts and probably don't need me to say too much about all that. I apologize for you and I thank you for your patience. You know, all I'm talking about is downloading a delivered file, right? They're called compressed files, right? You got to get used to it. My world is mostly Mac. We're all used to zip. Because I'm a teacher, I also got used to RAR. Those are the two kind of files. In my class, I'm going to deliver zips. We're going to do this often, so we'll have to get used to it. Did it go okay? Did you all, could you guys tell me, could you give me a thumbs up if you successfully got that zip and you got access to the folder? If it didn't work, can you give me one of these just so I know how many people need a hand?
I got it.
Got it? Great. So, folks, those of you with camera problems, I'm trying to be more generous and assume that all 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 people, is it really possible that 8 people have camera problems? You know, I have 100 students is the only class that does this. Nearly half the class hides.
So Matthew said he was gonna sign out for a second because his video and audio weren't working.
Thank you for telling me that. You know, teachers get jumpy when they think people are just willy-nilly. All right, in any case, if you got the folder, that's okay. If not, you need to ask for help now. Right? Please don't wait for later. It won't be okay to interrupt the class. This is a perfect time to ask. Tiffany knows a little bit more about, well, a lot more about Windows than I do. Some of you guys could help, right? All right, so I'm going to assume at this stage, since I'm not hearing from anyone. Tiffany, you're keeping your eye on the chats, right, I guess? So it looks like everybody got it. Okay, let's move on. We're not going to use that folder first. We have a couple exercises beforehand, right? So just, you know where it is. We'll come back to it. Okay. Okay, listen, guys. Oh, yeah, I wanted to apologize about something. I think I accidentally deleted the class 4 video. Did anybody look for it on YouTube and not find it? You did, Nasim? When did you look? Was it like, do you remember roughly when you looked for it?
I looked for like an hour after the class ended.
Right. Well, they always take longer than that. So let me just give you all a heads up about the YouTube videos. I don't know if you're watching them, but they've become incredibly popular with total strangers. One of my classes has 600 hits. That's a little weird. I'm not sure I'm supposed to allow strangers in. I don't even know how they found the class. 600 hits. So you should make use of it. I guess they're good enough. But they never show up in an hour, Nasim. This is why. Zoom takes like an hour to cook the video after class. Then YouTube takes a couple of hours. Once I upload it to YouTube, it's very long and incredibly slow. So sometimes if the class ends at, 12:30, 12:40, sometimes they're not up till 5 or 6 o'clock, So that's a bit of a problem. I could swear I uploaded it, and today I went and it was gone. So I have no idea what happened. So I apologize for that. I know some of you would like to back up to last week's classic tween, the beginning of classic tweening. The class 4 class is really good if you're uncomfortable with classic tweening. Today, I'm going to move forward. So I'm going to do a little review and then move forward. But if you find yourself uncomfortable after today's class, it's probably a good idea to go back. Skip the first half hour of the video. So right after class, I'm going to upload it. Again, may take a couple of hours just because I'm at the mercy of Zoom and YouTube. So in short, apologies, class 4 video is not online. I'm going to upload both class 4 and this class sometime today. They should be available by the evening. All right, so the videos are here. I hope you all know this. Apparently a lot of other people know it, strangely. This is Tiffany's email, which I mentioned last week. If you want to schedule time during her available slots, which are listed here, Tiffany knows what she's doing and she's very friendly. So I would definitely recommend taking advantage of that. Tiffany, you really spoiled me, and I really wish you could help me in all my classes. I really do. I don't know why they'd give me somebody in this class and not my other classes. I could really use it in MMP100. Anyway, so videos, Zoom, assets are new, guys. So I'm going to try to include a link on every homepage. I'm going to update the homepage each week and also have it on the handout. All right, let me move forward. I have no more to say about loaned computers, right? They have tried to reach every single student, and just about everybody but one person already received their computer. They really don't know what the limit is with him. They have a record of his name and made an appointment. So he's going to work it out. He and I have a conversation about it. That conversation is now over. But look at this. Adobe has extended the CC subscription. Yes, yes. This kind of thing makes atheists get religious. Nassim, I can't hear you. Your mic's off, Looks like you're talking to me. I assume it was just an exclamation of enthusiasm.
I was just laughing.
So anyway, we got Adobe. They're going to tease us for a while. I think they're kind of like trying to duke it out to try to make whatever business arrangement. So I don't know how long the extension is. It's at least a month, so we'll take it a month at a time. Yes. Not much to say about remote access. If anybody's been using it, you can continue to use it. I have 2 people using it in my other class. All right, I'm going to jump in. Animate's the coolest thing, and I want to get busy. So, folks, as I said, I am going to review, but we're not going to go into the same level of detail about last week. You'd be bored if I did. I'm going to do enough to make sure we can move into something much more interesting this week using classic tweening. But let's do a little review from the ground up. So, if everybody would open Animate, we don't need those assets that I delivered just yet. And as you guys have gotten used to, I usually ignore this page in most programs. I often just close it, right? Did I just quit? Your teacher gets silly by Friday. I use the file menu. I meant to close the splash page, not the program. All right, so I'm going to go to the file menu. It is the same clicking create. Well, I don't mind if you do that, but I do file menu new because that's the norm in most programs. File menu new. I'm going to stick with the same size we've been using this semester. We're going to mix that up later today, by the way, for the first time. But right now I'm using the same standard 640 wide, 480 tall, definitely 24 frame rate. Always check that and click create. All right, let's go over the basics of classic tweening. Okay, all right. If I hypnotized any of you with all the boring talk about extensions and Windows versus Mac, blah, 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 wake up now. The cool stuff begins. All right. Please make yourself a simple rectangle, not too large, down here. Bottom left corner, please. Don't improvise just yet. I'd like you to get your black arrow, your selection tool, and click it. Remember, at this stage, if you have a stroke, you have to double click. This is going to get very urgent pretty soon because I hope you remember symbols last week. Remember we were putting stuff in the library? Once something's converted to a symbol, it's one unit. You don't double click it anymore, right? So if you have your stroke on, at this stage, you do have to double click it. Make sure it's selected. Now, I want to talk to you quickly. The first step when preparing to classic tween, the absolutely urgent step, is you have to get it in the library. And what we call that is convert to symbol. And I want you to get used to the language. This is called an editable object because, well, I could edit it, right? But we're going to make it into a symbol. So we select it. And I'm going to recommend that you right-click on Windows or control-click the artwork on Mac, right-click or control-click, and choose Convert to Symbol. But I do want to mention, if you like shortcuts, you probably notice it says F8. A lot of you guys are on laptops, so if you prefer the F8 trick, you're probably going to have to hold down the FN key, right, which we've talked about. I'm going to use the menu. It gives you a chance to name it. I'm not going to bother on this one, but I do want you to check that the type says graphic. We're going to use 2 of these this semester, but we definitely want graphic now. Click OK. The next thing I want you to do is go to your library and make sure it's in there. I want to point something quickly out about the library. It's usually right next to the Properties tab by default. If yours accidentally gets put away, just go to the window menu. And you can get it from here. So this is going to show up as a list after you have a lot of library objects, lots of symbols, right? Lots of symbols. And right now you only have one, and here's the preview. Okay. Please do not skip that step. So let me back up a second. You don't do this for shape tweening, right? We didn't. You don't do it for frame by frame, but you definitely do it for classic tweening. And I have to be frank with you, my animation life has been mostly classic tweening. So I do this constantly, right? Okay, once you've done that, you have to go to the timeline to turn on your classic tween, right? So one thing I want to point out is, one question that comes up early is, when is this operation on the stage? And when is it on the timeline? You're always clicking something on stage or clicking a keyframe in the timeline. Stage timeline, stage timeline. Well, the artwork's on stage, right? So you went there to make your symbol. But now tweening is a timeline thing. So let's come down to the keyframe. And I want you to right click or control click your keyframe. Now, some of you guys have been clicking up here on the ruler, and it's really too late now to not know what a keyframe is, all right? This black dot here is a keyframe with artwork in it. So let's control click that and be clear. It's very easy to slip and choose the wrong tween. Please choose classic. All right. Now, what we're going to do is, these are the basic steps. Draw the object, make it a symbol, turn on the tween, right? 3 steps. Now we're ready to make a move. And before I go forward though, guys, listen, I think some of you think I don't like questions, but I actually do like questions. You know, so if you have any, don't be shy. It actually makes me glad to hear from anybody. Any questions? Is it too soon? Not yet. Okay. All right. Now, I want to point something out. You guys remember F6? Yeah, I want to say something about F6. F6 is one way to create your next keyframe. But when you have a classic tween on, you get 2 different choices. And I'm going to go over both today. So this is what I want you to do this time. I want you to notice that the playhead was probably moved to the end of this tween. So you asked for a classic tween, and suddenly this like purple bar showed up, That's 24 frames, exactly 1 second, right? And it moved to the end. If yours happens to be anywhere else, I want you to move it to the end now. And this is why. In a classic tween, you don't always have to make your own keyframes, but you do have to move the playhead. So move it to the end because we want to take this object and tell it, after 1 second, please arrive here. So you made your tween, you moved the playhead because you were happy with where it was in frame 1, but you weren't happy where it is in frame 24. So you drag the playhead over if necessary, and then you simply moved your object. I'd like you to drag the playhead back and play it. All right. Now the thing that's interesting about that is this means that anytime we want in a classic tween, you could just move the playhead to the moment where you want to relocate the artwork, right? So someone threw a baseball up in the air, right? Well, there's the moment it leaves the hand, keyframe. There's the moment it reaches its peak, keyframe. And there's the moment when it hits the floor, keyframe. We're going to do something just like that today. Right now, I want to do a zigzag. So can everybody join me on this? Bring the playhead back to the beginning. I'd like you then to drag it over just a little bit, right? Maybe 7 frames, something like that. Let's go a little less. Let's try it on 5. Can you drag that object straight up to the ceiling? By the way, if you want help making sure it's straight, you could hold down Shift. Now there's 3 keyframes. I'd like you to go another 5 frames and drag it back to the floor. I like holding down Shift when I want to go in a straight line. Very helpful. So you notice I got 4 keyframes on my timeline. I'm not finished, but I do want you to see what it looks like. So if you want to join me, just rewind it and see what happened. We're going to finish the zigzag, but before we do, I want to introduce something that might help this be even clearer. There's an easy way to skip from keyframe to keyframe to like remind yourself kind of what your goals were. Let's try it out. Can everybody bring the playhead back to frame 1? I want to draw your attention to the bottom of my timeline. I'm going to bring it up a little bit, make it easier to see. You see this little arrow here and this one? This means go to the next keyframe. So when you're on a layer, it helps you to skip to keyframes. So if I bring my playhead back, what I'm trying to say is it goes from here to the ceiling, then it goes back to the floor. Let me just back up a little bit. And then it slides along the floor. Good morning. And it slides along the floor. Let's play that again. So this here is kind of handy, skipping between keyframes. All right, I'd like you to manually, though, drag it back. Keyframe 1, some people call this scrubbing. I want you to scrub over to the next one. All right, it hits the ceiling, comes down to the floor, but that's not really what I want. On frame 15, I want it to hit the ceiling again. No problem. Let's just drag it over to frame 15. Bring it up to the ceiling. I could hold down Shift if I want. So now we've got an additional bounce. After that, bring it back to the beginning and play it. Now listen, guys, I know some of you are very natural at this. You're like, I got it. I got it in half the time it took the teacher to say it. I know some of you don't got it just yet, right? You know, life's got too much. I want to do it one more time, and then I want to go over some timing issues, right? Don't really like the timing on this, right? Before we get to something very deep that I have planned for today, right? So, can everyone open a new file? File menu, new. Same size, same frame rate, click create. All right, let's make ourselves a new shape in the same spot. Okay. Now, Someone turn on their mic and tell me, what do I have to do next? There's only one correct answer. Anybody? Come on, score some extra points.
Make it the symbol.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. So you have to select it though. So let's get the black arrow and select it. I'm suggesting right clicking or control clicking on a Mac. You hold down control, click it to get the menu. Some of you might adopt the F8 trick. I'm going to come down here, convert to symbol. Gives you a chance to name it, but I'm not going to bother. I'm going to click OK. That's going to get super repetitive, right? And at some point, you're going to do it without even thinking, right? It's in the library, you're good to go. All right, next step, right? How do I turn on the classic tween?
Click on the layer and then click on classic tween. Oh wait, that's the
Keyframe.
Yeah, you're close. And yes, now it's complete. Yes, I do have to go to the layer, but I have to be sure to click the keyframe. Now, this is why that matters so much. Your timeline is going to be much longer than ours have been. You know, hundreds, if not thousands of frames long. So what if something's supposed to classic tween way downriver, right? You go to that keyframe and tell it to classic tween. So it's not about the layer. It's telling that object in the keyframe from now on, you classic tween. So Matthew, you were very close. So you have to go to the keyframe itself, that black dot, control click it, and turn on your classic tween. At this point, it starts getting quite a bit easier, right? It's all about knowing where the playhead is, right? I suggest doing the largest motion first. I could do the bounce as we go along. You know what? Let's try it that way. Why not? Can everybody bring the playhead back to the beginning? Now, if you're feeling super ready to go, right, just start with me and then move a little forward on your own. It's okay. What I'm going to suggest is have this thing bounce a bit every 5 frames again, right? So I'm going to drag it over to frame 5 and then take it up to the ceiling and a little bit over. And you see it made the keyframe for me. I'm going to drag it over a few frames. I don't even really have to count. And I'm going to bring it down and a little bit over, right? It's going to feel like a bounce off the ceiling. I want it to bounce again, so I'm going to go a few frames further. So we're going in more acceptable, you know, expected order now. A few frames further, and I'm going to bring it up and a little bit over. We want to do that until it arrives in the opposite corner. So, you know, zigzag's not a drop. That's why I'm going down on angles and then back up on angles. So I'm just asking you to move the playhead forward every time you're ready. And notice, as long as you move the playhead first, it knows when you want the change. And now I'm just going to go to the end and bring it to the corner. So you don't have to have the exact same amount of bounces as I do. All right, when you're ready, bring it back and play it. How's this striking you guys? Does anyone find this easy?
Easy now because it's just the shapes.
What's that?
So it's easy now just because it's shapes.
Yes, very clear about that. That's true. But I mean, it's the steps, you know, because the truth of it is, like, depends on what kind of animator you become. Some of you guys aren't going to do any drawing. Some of you guys are going to do a lot of drawing. You know, it's really like if someone delivers shapes to me, it's all going to be about this. You know, I'm the person in charge of making it move. You know, so it doesn't matter if this is a face or a car or whatever at that point. We are going to be doing complex objects moving forward. So, all right, I want to go over a couple things. I think I want to start with timing. We're going to need a lot of it later. So here's the lowdown. And we're going to be watching an animation later too on YouTube that breaks down 12 animation principles, but timing is probably the biggest. So here's the main rule though. If 2 keyframes are really close to each other, right, the movement's fast. If the same movement is further apart, that's more time, so the movement is slow, right? Keyframes that are near produce a faster movement. Keyframes that are further apart make a slower movement. I feel like this whole animation is way too fast, right? So let's start by making the first part, the first little sequence slower. Now, there is a menu way to do this, but it's way too slow. So I'm going to really ask everyone to get serious with the shortcuts. All right. This is the part that they all feel too fast, right? Like really that's 5 frames apart, right? It's just, it's like this thing had more coffee than me. All right. Now, to speed it up, what I need for you to do is be sure you're aware where the layer is, right? Like I've seen people clicking on the rulers. I don't want you to do that. You have to click between the actual keyframes. So I'd like you to click in between these 2 keyframes, right? You know, not here, not here, definitely not up here. That just moves the playhead. I want you to click in here. All right, F5 adds frames, not keyframes, frames. If you're on a laptop, you probably have to hold FN. So I'm on a laptop. I'm holding down FN. The F key's in the top row. I tap 1 frame, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just added 5 frames. It's twice as long. I'm going to rewind it and see what that feels like. Do you notice the first one's slower? Right? The first approach takes longer than the others. F5 couldn't be more important, right? FN for some of us, F5. I'd like you to speed up each section. So you're going to go in between your sets of keyframes, hold down FN, tap F5. Depends how slow you want to go. You have a little bit of freedom right now.
Professor,
Yes.
I put a few too many keyframes in one. How do I put it to
How do you
delete
back
it?
off?
Yeah.
I'm going to do that next, Joseph. Hey, Joseph, do people call you Joe?
Oh, whatever, it's fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to do that in 1 minute. All right. Give me a second, though. So that often happens. In fact, but I do want to just point out when you click between pairs or bookends, I sometimes call them, right? You could slow that animation down by F5ing in the middle. So I'm going to answer Joe's question in a second, but I just want to make sure this sinks in for everybody. So basically, you get to choose how long or short each section is. Now, you know, he's got a very specific way of thinking. I admire that, Joe, really. So now the whole thing's slower, right? Feels a little more natural. But if you didn't want that, you can go to any section and change the timing by removing frames, right? You just added plain frames, not keyframes. You could think of them as tweened frames right now. Now he wants to speed some of it up. So Joe, check this out. You go in between, but I suggest that you go a little to the left, and I want to show you why. I wouldn't click quite in the middle, a little to the left. This is Shift F5, which, you know, takes a bunch of fingers if you need your FN key. So I add FN. I'm going to stop mentioning that at some point. I hold down Shift also, and with Shift held down, every time I tap F5, look what it's doing. It's taking frames out. The reason I like to click a little bit to the left is because I don't want to accidentally take this keyframe out. So I'm bringing them very close. Now, if I get really close, like now, they're just 3 frames apart, that first part of the animation is going to be like zip, and then the rest are going slowly. If I loop it for you, you'll see, right? That first leap is like, whoom, and then the others are much, much longer. That first one's got 3 frames to do its thing. The other's got roughly 10. Shift F5 is the short answer to your question, Joe. Did it work?
Yeah.
Great. So guys, those 2 things are 2 of the most important things of the semester. Any form of tweening is going to need that. F5 to spread things out, Shift F5 to bring them closer. All right, let's do some quick properties together. So the other big thing last week was, how do things change color? How do they change size? What if I want something to disappear, look invisible for a little while, right? Those are all considered properties. A number of them are similar, right? Let's start with scale and rotation. And I want to say something about art and animation for a minute. Scale is relative size. So if I step into a room and a guy who's 5'10" steps into the room with me, you can't tell us apart. The guy's a half an inch taller than me, right? We're going to look just about the same. Even if he's 5'11", you might not even notice. If the dude's 6.5 feet tall, right, you see the difference. Scale is relative size. It's not just big or small, it's relative size. So one thing I want to say to you as animators, you want to keep someone interested, change scale a lot. You know, you watch the movie, you know, sometimes I'll do this. I'm talking to you like this. I think I lost your attention, and I'll do something like, are you guys there? It's hard to avoid that. I changed the scale. That's an animation trick. You know, it's going to get the eye's attention. Let's do some scale. The other thing is rotation. If I talk to you like this, is that the weirdest thing? Right? That's not the correct orientation. Human beings like this, upright, this, they hate that. That's why in horror movies, you always see the camera tilt at some point, especially if someone's running from the monster. You know? Some people call it a Dutch angle or a canted angle. But we're going to flat out rotate it. Let's try it out. All right, let's go back to the beginning. And if your first sequence is short, 3 frames, click inside and spread it out a little bit. I'm going to go back in that little sequence there. And I'm going to F5 again, give myself some room. I want at least 10 frames. In fact, I'm going to make mine 15. So the beginning's kind of slow. That's the slowest part, the very beginning. So here's the deal. This keyframe has a small object. My very next keyframe has the same size. That's not too interesting. Let's change it. All right. This tool here, right beneath the black arrow, is called the transform tool. You gotta love this tool. What I want you to do is take it and make this object big. Now, don't be timid. You know, get that feel for like trying to shock the eye to pay attention. Some people will make it cover the whole stage even. You know, right now I'm gonna make mine really big, but you know, not get crazy. Because I also want to rotate it. This tool is the best for scale, changing size, and for rotation. To rotate, you don't grab the corner, you come just outside the corner, press and drag. I'm only going to rotate it 1/4 of the way, 90 degrees. Now here's the deal, right? I rotated clockwise, so what's going to happen is that object's going to rotate clockwise as it gets larger. But remember, the following keyframe, right, has its own orientation. So what's going to have to do is rotate the opposite way as it goes to the third keyframe. That's kind of curious. It's going to be very interesting to the eye. I only rotated the object, this object, in the second keyframe. So when you come back and play it, this is what you get. And that's incredibly useful, and it's commonly used even on TV. You see it in commercials and that kind of thing. Scale tool is an easy tool to use, right? The premise.
Sorry, it was kind of like one of those rewind things, though, like movies sometimes do.
Well, it does feel a little that way, only because it's going clockwise and then reverse, right? Which is kind of interesting. In terms of actually making things feel like they rewind, that would be taking all of your keyframes on the timeline and reversing them.
Yeah.
That's something I would like to show you at some point. Maybe I could even do it today. Yeah, this does feel a little that way, though. It's just about rotation, however. You know, did it work for everybody? So listen, the only thing you need to remember, though, is when working on the artwork, changing its size or rotating it, it has to live in a keyframe. You can't do this between keyframes. It's got to be, you have to make sure you're over a keyframe before you can do it. And that's a critical concept. There really is no artwork between the keyframes. It's just a trick. Okay, let's move on. I want you to go to your next keyframe. So let's keep going back to stay oriented. So I left that second keyframe. I'm heading over to the third one. So to change that artwork, I do have to find that keyframe. I don't have to click it really, but I do have to at least have the playhead there. So this is back when it hits the floor, right? The first time it hits the floor, right? What I'd like to do with that one is change its color. So I want to say something to you about color. You might remember a feature on the properties palette called color effects. And the thing that's cool about color effects is it has 3 effects that we used last week, and the steps are very similar. One is tint. That's flat out color changing. Tint, we call it here, Tint. The other one is Alpha, which is transparency. Really cool. And the third one is brightness, just light and dark, right? Tint, alpha, brightness. The steps are very similar. So this is how they work. Now this is a weird one, so I would like you to pay close attention though. Over the keyframe, and I'll even click the keyframe because I want to make a big point. Even if you click it, if you look at the properties palette, you just don't see color effects. It's just not there, right? How do you get it? All right. Really, I see some of you take notes, right? You guys are probably particularly likely to succeed, right? You have to find the keyframe, but you must click the artwork once to see color effects. Other than that, it thinks you're talking about time and tweens, not color or stuff like that. So you find your keyframe that interests you, but then you click the artwork once and look what happens to the properties palette. It changed, and it includes this. So the moral of the story is find the keyframe, the black dot, click the artwork only one time, and then go to color effects. Let's start with tint. Go to tint. Tint is pretty easy. You really just need this box and one slider. So you click the box to choose the color you want to tint to. I believe I have a red shape, so I'm going to just change it to this kind of golden yellow. And then you get to choose really how much tint. You know, I'm set to 100% right now, but if I back down, it's probably going to look orange. And the reason I knew that is because I started with a red object at 0 tint. When you add yellow to red, it turns orange. But if I go too far, or not too far, but if I go all the way, let's say, it's just the new color. That's all there is to tint. All right, the trick is remembering. You find the keyframe, you click the art. Now, if you rewind, you'll see that the earlier object was red. So that means it's going to tween the tint till it arrives. And then it's going to tween back up to the original color because the other keyframe's still red. All right, if you want to rewind it, just get a peek, see how we're doing. That's where we're at. Did tint behave? I got to tell you, if it did behave, you're good to do alpha and you're good to do brightness. If it didn't behave, just join me on the next property so you can see what the pattern is. All right. So I'm backing up to remind myself where I was, right? This is the one I just tinted. I'm going to go to the next keyframe. Properties palette is not helpful because I have to click the artwork once. And there's color effects again. I'm not doing tint, but the steps are really similar. I'm going to go to the menu. And this time, I think I would like to try alpha. You know, one of the reasons I love alpha is things just don't go transparent in the real world. You know, so if you make things suddenly disappear, it's pretty wild. All right, so I went to the keyframe, clicked the artwork once. Alpha just means transparency. You might think of it as opacity if you're used to Photoshop or Illustrator. It's all the same. And you just choose how transparent you want it. That's pretty cool. So now this object's doing all kinds of stuff. All right. Hey, you know something? I do want to move on with properties, but I suddenly have this urge to make the object pause. You know, and the reason I want to do it is because I don't even feel the transparency. It just happened too quickly. And even if I do my F5 stuff, it'll only be transparent for that 1/24th of a second, right? That one keyframe is a 24th of a second. It's not a lot. What if I just make it stop there for a little bit, you know?
You create a keyframe and then
Tell what happened, and then suddenly it comes back. How would one actually make a pause? And there's lots of tricks for this, but I want to share with you something. You are absolutely right, but I have to take precisely this unusual way we need to make the keyframe. You're completely right, but I want to point something out. Have a look at this. Can you find the keyframe where it's transparent? So here's mine. Now, I want to remind you something, and please do not F6 now, but I do want to talk up F6 for a minute. You know, when we started using F6, we were using it to copy the last keyframe. And when I was teaching, and I kept saying this odd thing, F6 usually copies the last keyframe. I kept throwing in the word usually. It's not typical of me to do that. Usually, the reason is, now we're ready for the next thing. If you F6 in a tween, right, in that purple bar, F6 doesn't copy the last keyframe. It turns whatever it sees into a keyframe. So that wouldn't create the pause. I do need a keyframe, Joe, but I want to make sure that it doesn't do this. So guys, don't join me on this. I just want you to see something. If I intend here to create a pause and F6 here, don't do it, okay, please. Here's my keyframe. It just turned that current piece of artwork into a keyframe. People do that because, oh, I want to change its scale or its color, and I need a keyframe. That's not what we want. So I'm going to Command Z that. What we want is a pause. So check this out. Have we done any option dragging? I think we have. Option dragging copies stuff. On Windows, it's alt dragging. Sometimes you copy artwork that way, right on stage, but sometimes you copy a keyframe. That's what we want to do. So check this out. This is the keyframe, find yours, the one that has the transparent object. Mac people, hold down Option. Windows people, hold down Alt. Keep it down, Option or Alt. Press and drag that keyframe over, and I'm just going to go 5-6 frames. Now, you copied the same keyframe. Mine was on frame 35, and I just copied it over frame 41. Since they're identical, nothing happens. It's a pause. You know, I got to tell you something. I didn't realize my first couple of years of animation how badly I needed more pauses.
You also, but by copying it and putting on the other frame, you reduce the time on the other one, right?
That's true. Joe, I love the way you look at this, man. I think you're going to be really good at it because that was on my mind even before I did it. So yes, that's true. The next sequence is going to look really fast now because we just squeezed it. We'd have to go in there and F5 to fix that. But I want to play it before I do that. Since this keyframe and this keyframe is the same, but it's a very short amount of time. Let's see if we can sense it. Here it comes. Did you feel that? Little pause. Then it came down. Of course, if you wanted the pause to be further, make sure you're in the right sequence. And I could click in there and F5 it. I'm creating a very long pause now. I didn't fix the part Joe was talking about, this little squeezed part yet, but I'm gonna come back here. So that was kind of weird because the pause was so long and then it just zipped to the floor. So I don't mind if yours isn't exactly the same as mine, but here's the pause. I used option dragging or alt dragging to guarantee that that object's in the same place for a longer amount of time. If I don't want it to zip to the floor like that, I kind of like it actually, but if I don't, I find that part that's now too fast. I click in it and I just F5 again. All right, here's my whole animation. Listen, folks, if you're getting this, wonderful. If you're getting 70% of it, 75%, also wonderful. You know, I got to say, all our minds work differently, and speed of your thinking is not required. Depth of your thinking is required. So if you're deep and slow, I'm cool with it. It just means practice a little bit more, and you'll have a deeper understanding. If you happen to be super fast, wonderful. You know, how's this working out, guys? Does this starting to make sense? So this is the universe of keyframes is what we're talking about today. Different ways to make them, different ways to spread them out for time's sake, or bring them closer for time's sake, copying them for time's sake. All right, let me get back to properties. Properties of an object. Look, let me be frank. If you were going on a blind date, friend set you up on a date, you'd be like, oh, is he or she kind? That would be my first question. Is he or she funny? Is he or she, those are properties, right? You know, beautiful, you know, strong, whatever you like in a person. Those are properties. We're talking about properties now of an object. Scale, rotation, tint, alpha. I want to just throw in, I think, one more. Brightness. I used to ignore brightness. I always use tint for everything. Then I realized brightness has an advantage. Brightness simply makes an object lighter, essentially whiter, more white, or darker, essentially more black, right? So let's see where we left off. I'm looking first for my transparent part. So there's the transparent pause. Here's its drop to the floor, and it hit the floor. What if we change the brightness there? I want to say something though. With the white background, if we up the brightness, it's going to feel the same as alpha. It's just going to show more white. So I think I'm going to use brightness to make it darker. There's a little bit more drama in what we're doing. We can go either way. The steps are almost exactly the same as tint and alpha. Find your keyframe. Just find it, the one you want, right? So this is after it hits the floor again. Click the artwork once, right? Because if you don't, Properties palette won't show you color effects. So you find the keyframe, then you click the artwork, go to color effects, and we're talking about brightness. All right, and mine happens to be set at 100, which looks transparent because I have a white background. I'm going to go the other way. I can make it black, close to black. So your character's walking along and they walk into the shadows, right? They can't stay the same brightness if they're walking into the shadow. You're going to need this. All right. Whenever you're ready, I'd like you to rewind. I'm kind of excited to get to a much more challenging subject. I am recording, aren't I? Am I? You know, I don't know why on my side
You're recording.
it stopped giving me. There's a tiny thing I just noticed the other day. Little thing I have to look for. Oh yeah, I'm recording. Good. I felt really bad that the other video disappeared. I'm fairly certain I uploaded it, and I thought, oh my God, these people really need that video. But I'm making sure I'm recording. Okay. That's the basics of how it's all done. Right? I saw a lot of you taking notes. So we drew an object, could be a whole person, you know, turned it into a symbol, right? That was the first step. Then we went to the timeline, chose that keyframe, and turned on the classic tween. After that, it was a lot of changes. I want to mention just a couple more things before we go. What if this animation needed to continue beyond the number of frames you currently have, right? Now we've actually, remember it was 24 frames when you turned on the classic tween. But then we've been doing so much F5ing, it's probably quite a bit longer. But what if you wanted to extend it? Let's take a quick look at that. I'd like you to find your last keyframe. So I'm getting close to 4 seconds now. I'm on frame 92, and I know that because down here it says 92, and over here it says 4S for 4 seconds. What if I wanted to be longer? Something that I often do is F5 way out there after the last frame. Let's see what that looks like. So find your last keyframe, go a little ways further, I don't know, another 20 frames or something like that. Click in the timeline. I want to point out, this isn't even a frame. You know, this is like those little boxes on your calendar. They're not really days. You know, they're days you hope are going to arrive. But I'm going to actually make it real now. So I click in there, however far along I want, and I just use the same F5 trick we've been using all along. So you see the purple line got longer, but this time there's little dots there, little dots, you know, and what those little dots mean is it's incomplete. You know, it didn't do anything since the prior keyframe, but you could do whatever you want. I'm about to drop this, but I do want to point out now, you know, 2 different ways to make keyframes. So this is one way that I find very convenient. All right, that's where it stopped. I made more time for myself, so I could drag the playhead and tell it, why not slide back to the left? So I might figure out how long I think that ought to take, and then slide it to the left. And I've made use of that. And I could keep adding frames as often as I want to go in there and make additional changes. I'm going to look at my handout in a moment just to see if I forgot anything. It's one way that I keep myself on track. But does anyone have a question, something on their mind, you know, that they were wishing Classic Tween could do? Yeah, Matthew.
No, it's just a bit different for me because I'm using the tablet, but I figured out how to do the pause.
You did. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. I've never even tried this. So you're on you told me once, I think you're on a Surface, right? A Microsoft
Yeah, I'm on the Surface.
Surface. Does it have an Alt key?
Nope.
There's no Alt key?
Nope.
That's bizarre. Yeah.
But I figured out how to make the pause though.
Okay.
I just inserted a keyframe, yeah. And
Yes.
on the transparent rectangle, and it created the pause.
I have to say, like, I get the gist of what you're saying. My only concern is if someone creates a keyframe with like F6, or they just right click and do insert keyframe, it isn't always going to be a pause. I want to come back and just point something out. These are the first two keyframes. So you guys remember its goal, right? Look what happens if I do F6 in the middle of that, right? So I didn't F6 yet. You can see there's no keyframe down there, right? But I'm going to do it now. Now, all that did was create a keyframe in that spot. So that didn't create a pause, right? It just took the artwork in the tween and said, you know what? I'm going to actually elevate you to a new status. You are a keyframe. And why? Well, I don't know. Maybe I have another idea, like I want it to get really tiny before it gets large. I couldn't have done that unless I made a keyframe. So it didn't help me with the pause, but it does help me with other things. So you could actually add keyframes by going between current keyframes and F6ing. So, you know, what I'm imagining Matthew probably did was maybe he made his keyframe right next to it so you could hardly tell, you know, and then moved it over. That makes sense. There are a lot of ways to do it. So I appreciate your ingenuity, Matthew. Make it happen no matter how, right? That's the idea. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Even all of you with broken cameras or whatever, you could turn on your mic still. How you doing, Michael, Timothy, Kayla, Gabriel, Rogelio, Daniela, Harold, Ben?
I think I got the hang of this.
You do?
Mhm.
Great. So, you know, I got to tell you, my class goes from, I don't know how you measure my class in the way of difficulty. I'm not sure anyone would tell me honestly. Is this too easy? Is it too hard? I really just don't know. Maybe it's just right. I got a thumbs up. Thank you, Wei Ming. I hope it's just right. The class does get harder. Cool. So we're going to do something a little bit deeper. I just want to take a look at my handout and make sure we're ready for it. Give me a moment. All right. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever seen rateyourprofessor.com. Professors hate Rate Your Professor.
I've seen it.
It's usually the angry students that go there.
No, it's the sometimes we use it to see how our professor is so we could choose them wisely later before we pick the class. Because I had a professor for math. He was horrible, and it was before I knew that he was his class.
To be honest with you, if I'm going to interview with anybody who happens to be, I'll look everybody up. If they're a professor, I look them up. And the thing is, like, what's weird is, like I said, when you're happy, people tend not to say anything. You know, if you ever bought something from Amazon and the whole exchange went great, how often do you actually bother to say, I loved it?
Yeah, that's
true. But if it sucks, you're sure to do it. So, you know, I get somebody who's just constantly angry, and I've had a couple people like that. You know, they trash you. you know, and say, I've been at a lot of schools, so I'm all over rate your professor. BMCC people have been very kind to me. They actually, I only got really nice comments there, but I had one student 10 years ago, even longer, who thought I should be taken out and shot. You know, it's like, it was so mortifying. It really was, really hurt.
Extreme.
But anyway, Matthew's idea is a good one. If you ever get a choice, you know, there's like 3 different sections, you know, and one of those teachers gets glowing reviews, that's the one you want to take. All right, anyway, let me get back to it. Let's take a look. All right, let's see. We did convert to symbol. Oh yeah, I don't want to forget that. Oh, I'm so glad I make handouts. This is secretly for me. We just covered all this stuff, but we skipped this, symbol editing mode. This is a really important one too. So let's get back to animate. And I want to point out something that might have already happened to some of you, right? And I feel bad if it did. I want to point out 2 things about symbol editing mode, all right? But before that, that means you don't like the object anymore. You like the animation, but you want to update your object. It's just not cool enough, right? So there's one way that I think is the best way, and I also want to show you its alternatives. So what I need for you to do is go to your library. Now, currently, in your library, there's only one object on the list, right? I'd like you to click on the little icon. If you click on the name, it's going to think you want to rename it. So I'm going to click on that little icon. So I want you to double click it. Now, when you do that, your whole animation temporarily disappears, just temporarily. You told the actor to go to the dressing room, but the real name is symbol editing mode, symbol editing mode. Now here, the rule is don't do any animation, but do anything else you want to do. So you could click off the object and change its shape. Now this object was not editable on the main timeline. You couldn't have done this because you already made it a symbol. But in symbol editing mode, it acts like it's brand new. So you can make any kind of changes you want. That includes additions. So you could do anything you feel like doing, but move it. Be very careful not to move it. Because if you move it here, you're going to kind of break the actual animation. So you can do anything you feel like right now. Take a stab, do something to it. Alter it. You could even change its color if you want. Thing is, it will affect your tints. You know, if you change its color, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, thing is, you make your changes, you didn't do any animation, it's just, you know, doctoring up the actor. You want to get back into the scene, right? So, up top, in the top left corner, oops, you gotta be kidding. Maybe they had serious internet problems. Okay. Yes. You have to go back to the movie to see if you like the changes you just made. So in the top left corner, and I've kind of trained myself to keep looking up here, because, you know, some of you guys double click everything. You know, like, you know those people who wait for the elevator and they keep just like, you know, like the elevator is going to be faster. You know, and really, you don't want to hand them a gun because it's like, one shot's enough, for God's sake. But if you're that type of person, you want to keep looking up here. If it says symbol or the name of one of your symbols, you know you're not in the movie. But you click that arrow to get back. All right. Why don't you check out your movie with the changes you just made? Quite a bit more interesting, isn't it? I love rotations with complex objects. Did that work for everybody? You know, by the way, your grade never goes down if you say something doesn't work. Never, ever. All right.
How do you,
yeah.
Actually, how do you get back to it again? I'm sorry, kind of.
Let me do that.
You get back
so
to the
if I open it from the library, right, make my changes. You see in the top left, there's this little arrow here. That means take me back to the movie. In the top left.
Oh, this one?
Well, I'm screen
sharing.
Oh,
yeah, I see it. I see it.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Jacob, because you really can't do this program without that because you constantly leave the movie for different things, and then you come back to see how it went. All right. I want to tell you my only worry about that. And this is also a good way in certain situations, but I'd like you to join me on this. Could you go into your regular timeline? And I'd like you to go some keyframes deep, right? So I'm going to choose this moment here to make a point. If I go to a keyframe and double click that object, I'm also going into symbol editing mode. So bear with me for a minute. Do you remember earlier today you had to click once to change tint? You had to click once to change alpha. Same for brightness. So it's very important we know the difference between one click and two. But if you go to artwork on stage, so you're on a keyframe, you found your artwork and you double click it, check out what happens. So just make sure you're over a keyframe, not in between. Go to the artwork on the stage and double click it. So what's odd about this, it's showing me the object in symbol editing mode, but in the position that it is on stage. Sometimes you like this because all the other layers would be visible. They'd be kind of milky, so you know you can't touch them, but you'd know where the other objects are to help you make that decision. So there's two ways to alter the object. They're both symbol editing mode. One is easier, go to the library and double click it. That's the easier way. The other way might be more helpful sometimes. Choose a keyframe. Just remember, when you double click it, you're not just changing the one in that keyframe, you're still changing the original, the one in the library. You're still changing the entire timeline. So it doesn't matter too much which way you do it. So I'm going to prove it. So let's say I go here and I take this dot out now that I put, right? Maybe I'll even change the colors of the other two. When I go to the top left, right, I could click the arrow or I could click scene one. I'm back in the movie. And I'll see that best before the objects had property changes. This is the way the original looked. I never touched frame one, but it does its thing along the way. Still has all the properties. So, you know, I don't want to get too detailed, right? But let's just isolate. Symbol editing mode. You all know what it's for. You don't like the way the object looks, right? There's two ways in. The library, double click. Or one of the objects on stage, double click. I'm going to look at my handout in a minute. Hang on a second here. All right. I use that feature a lot. We used it plenty last week, right? I just want to come back to it. And you know, my big concern is, like I said, if you accidentally double click, it's really disorienting. You know, everything seems to disappear. You're like, oh my God, you know, what happened? Any questions for me about symbol editing mode or anything we did? So you notice I'm being a lot more detailed about classic tweening because a lot of the hardcore stuff is going to require it, right? Okay. I'm going to look at the handout again. It's 10:30. You could tell I'm going very much off mat in terms of the time that I applied. I'm trying something new this semester with you guys, and I'm pretty pleased with it, where I'm not sticking to the way I divided up the whole semester up to the detail. I'm seeing what feels natural for all of us so we can get a deeper understanding. I'd really rather go deeper than wider. You know, too much stuff, people think, oh, I got more, but they don't. You know, I'd rather go deep, make sure that you're confident. You know what? Can we just do one light thing together before we take the break? I want to show you a brief movie and just talk it up a bit, and then we'll take ourselves a break. You guys look, those with your cameras on anyway, look pretty fresh. So I'm going to try this one thing. I want to mention something to you. So let's stop tweening and all that for a minute. You know, in the history of animation, I think we'd all agree the most influential company by far, is who? Who would you think?
Disney.
Hands down. Hands down. I mean, really, Hanna-Barbera did what they do. Fred Flintstone, you know, I don't know what even talks about Hanna-Barbera anymore. Warner Brothers, Bugs Bunny, right? But Pixar, of course, is in Studio Ghibli. Am I saying that right? Studio Ghibli? That's
You're saying it right.
I am. You know, they're all wonderful companies, but Disney has the big influence. So I just want to say something. I take Disney with a big spoon of sugar, really, because I don't particularly like Disney, but I do like things I could learn from Disney. My arguments with them is that their storylines, well, frankly, a large part of their past was pretty notably racist. They've been trying to fix that, and I think they'll eventually evolve. But I really also don't like the messages they send to children, which is all about danger, danger, danger. Most children in Disney movies don't have parents, or one parent got killed. I really don't know what the point is in alarming everyone from the earliest age. Also, I don't like the rest of us thinking we're supposed to draw like that. So let me stop for a minute. What? Aren't Disney drawings beautiful? Yeah, sure, okay. But frankly, I mean, really, should everyone draw the same? I mean, God, most of you know what a Picasso looks like, and some of you know what Van Gogh looks like, and aren't you glad they don't look the same? You know, aren't you glad the Mona Lisa doesn't look like a Picasso? You know, with all her features stuck on one cheek or something, you know? Just like, bleh, listen, we got to break the tyranny of Disney. But they're brilliant. And they really do know how to keep the eye interested. And they also know how to exaggerate physics from the real world. So this is really where I want you to listen. We're going to examine the 12 principles that have been pushed by two really famous Disney artists. At some point, I'll pull out my book. It comes with a book for anyone who wants it. I'll get it for you because I know a few of you are going to want it. That breaks down Disney principles. But here's an example. If you ran into a wall at full speed, don't do this at home. But if you ran into a wall at full speed, say this was you, boom, you couldn't look like this when you hit the wall. You know, you could look like this, but once you hit the wall, you'd have to be like, right? You'd have to. And that's true of any object. Whether it's a person, it's a ball, whatever it is, right? And when you squash against the wall, do you get smaller? Of course not. You squash, so that means you stretch one way. It's called squash and stretch. And it's a Disney principle, squash and stretch. It's one of my favorites. So I want to show you a bunch of things like that I got to tell you, I've watched this movie a million times. And every single time I watch it, I learn more. So I'm going to share a link with you. I think those of you who are really into this, share the link, save the link, you know, so you could watch it 100 times on your own. Let's take a look. I want to show you something real quick because I want you to keep your eye out for these. There are 12 principles in this movie, but we're going to be focusing on these first. I got one. I think I got about 6 of them. Slow in, slow out. It's about timing. We've done some similar stuff. Arcs, I really feel like taking that one out. We're not going to really stress that too much. Squash and stretch, I was just talking about. We already started working with timing. Secondary action, honestly, we've done very little with that. You know, it's like, if someone's bopping along, walking down the street, wouldn't it be more interesting if there was a ball bouncing up like on the head? That's like a soccer master walking down the street. So it's a secondary action, you know. And you know, life is filled with secondary actions. You know, a rock gets thrown through the window. You need something else to happen. Does the glass fly? Should papers fly all over the place? Does the hair get blown? You know, it makes it all believable. So we're going to look for these principles. It's on the handout for anyone who wants to come back. Here's the link, and I'm going to show this to everybody at once, so you don't really have to click it. Here we go.
The following has been paraphrased from The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. Squash and stretch. This action gives the illusion of weight and volume to a character as it moves. Anticipation. Prepares the audience for a major action the character is about to perform. Each major action is preceded with specific moves that anticipate for the audience what is about to happen. Staging. It's the presentation of an idea so that it is clear. Straight ahead and pose to pose. Pose to pose is charted with key drawings done at intervals throughout the scene.
Like keyframes.
Straight ahead animation starts at the first drawing and works drawing to the end of the scene.
Like frame by frame.
Follow through and overlap. When the main body of the character stops, all other parts continue to catch up to the main mass. Nothing stops all at once.
Physics.
Slow in and slow out. As the action starts, we have more drawings near the starting pose, one or two in the middle, and more drawings near the next pose. Fewer drawings make the action faster, and more drawings make the action slower.
Like frames.
Arcs. All actions, with few exceptions, follow an arc or slightly circular path. Arcs give animation a more natural action and better flow. Secondary action. It's an additional action in the scene used as a supplement of the main one in order to reinforce it and
Hey,
add more
like my
dimension.
soccer player.
Timing. More drawings between poses slow and smooth the action. Fewer drawings make the action faster and crisper. Timing maintains the appearance of an object abiding by the laws of physics. Exaggeration. Remain true to reality, just presenting it in a wild or more extreme form. Solid drawings. It means taking into account forms in three-dimensional space, giving them volume and weight. Appeal. It's a quality of charm, able to please the viewer's eyes. It's the charisma of the action.
Okay, I want to actually watch that one more time with you, right? So let's just watch as closely as you can. You have the link, you can watch it more later. Hey, you, stop that. My cat was carving the chair. All right, hang on a second there. Oh, come back. Let me, get that playhead back there. There we go.
The following has been paraphrased from The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. Squash and stretch. This action gives the illusion of weight and volume to a character as
We're
it
gonna do
moves.
this.
Anticipation. Prepares the audience for a major action the character is about to perform. Each major action is preceded with specific moves that anticipate for the audience what is about to happen. Staging. It's the presentation of an idea so that it is clear. Straight ahead and pose to pose. Pose to pose is charted with key drawings done at intervals throughout the scene. Straight ahead animation starts at the first drawing and works drawing to the end of the scene. Follow through and overlap. When the main body of the character stops, all other parts continue to catch up to the main mass. Nothing stops all at once. Slow in and slow out. As the action starts, we have more drawings near the starting pose, one or two in the middle, and more drawings near the next pose. Fewer drawings make the action faster, and more drawings make the action slower. Arcs. All actions, with few exceptions, follow an arc or slightly circular path. Arcs give animation a more natural action and better flow. Secondary action. It's an additional action in the scene used as a supplement of the main one in order to reinforce it and add more dimension. Timing. More drawings between poses slow and smooth the action. Fewer drawings make the action faster and crisper. Timing maintains the appearance of an object abiding by the laws of physics. Exaggeration. Remain true to reality, just presenting it in a wild or more extreme form. Solid drawings. It means taking into account forms in three-dimensional space, giving them volume and weight. Appeal. It's a quality of charm, able to please the viewer's eyes. It's the charisma of the action.
Kind of interesting, isn't it? So look, I really want everyone to keep an open mind. Those of you who love Disney and Disney-esque type of movies have no problem with this at all. I mean, I'm sure it's just an absolute delight. I know some of you might have much more specific kind of taste. If you're into underground animation, it depends who it is, who uses this stuff and who doesn't. Many people do. But I could think of a lot of movies that will use all the animation principles in terms of this many frames produces this kind of speed. But in terms of like squash and stretch and stuff like that, you're not going to see it in every kind of animation. But I would recommend exploring them all. You know, see how they feel for you when you're animating. And we're going to be taking on at least half a dozen of these throughout the semester, you know, to help you feel fluent, to give you more choices, but not for me to push them on you. Because at some point, we're going to take a break, look at a bunch of snippets of different styles out there so we could break any kind of tyranny and just see how free all this is. But I hope you did enjoy that particular film. As short as it really is worth watching and rewatching so you could really understand it. Whatever is obvious to you, fine. Whatever parts you don't get is really worth reviewing. You know, one or two of them, the one that's like to make the idea clear, that wasn't clear in that movie. I always laugh about that. It's the least clear part of the movie. It's about clarity. But we're going to go over a bunch of these principles live right after the break. We're going to actually make a cube move. A little bit similar to the movie itself, but we're going to make a cube act as though it's alive, propel itself into the air, fly into the air, and create some suspense, some anticipation, and hit the ground. And then it's going to have to squash and stretch with that kind of impact on the ground. That's coming up after the break. So it is 20 to 11. Let me just think. I think you guys really deserve a longer break than I sometimes give. How about a 25-minute break? Right, 25 minutes today. That's 5 minutes longer than usual, but you know, I feel like they've been too short. Guys, solemn oath that you will be here at 5 after 11. All right. Those of you who don't know what time is, you can't be an animator. Time may be a human-invented illusion, but we depend on it. So I really need for you to be on time. Ben, what can I do for you?
What's the link?
What's what name?
The link for the video.
Go to the handout. Here, let me give you a quick peek. The link is right here, number 4. That's the link. It's called Illusion of Life. So you could just search Illusion of Life. It's very popular. But there's the actual YouTube link.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Anybody else have a last question for me before I take my break too? All right, solemn oath, 5 after 11. I'm going to see you then. Okay? All right. We're good now?
Yeah, now
It's
the good thing you caught it early.
Okay, the rather eccentric teacher tried this twice without turning on recording. So I'm going to do it again right now. This is where it all started. So these are like delivered assets, but they've not been prepared in any way. So I'm selecting this cube because I want to classic tween it. So just like I've said now a number of times, I'm going to convert to symbol. I select that cube, convert to symbol. I always do this before I classic tween anything. It's required. And I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to have a neat library if I add more stuff. All right. Now I'm going to extend the timeline to make sure that nothing disappears on me. I'm going to frame 50 of my cube layer, and I F5. I'm going to the floor layer. I'm doing the same thing. I F5. Now it's all on tape, so to speak. Okay. I think you guys already turned on your classic tween. You guys out in YouTube land, the class really did it already, but the teacher didn't record it. All right. So I'm going to catch up. I'm going to the first frame of just the cube and turning on my classic tween. So only layers that have an object to move are going to classic tween. Now I want to tell you the first thing that I want to do. This is a strange idea. I want to treat that cube like it has some life. And that makes some kind of sense because we were watching Illusion of Life before the break. And sure enough, they did beautiful things with the cube. You know, my favorite part was when it spun around like a ballerina. You know, and it had so much charisma and the timing was so perfect. It really had some, you know, attitude and personality. I'm going to try a little of that. So here's the thing. If you were going to jump in the air, let me see if this is possible. I'm going to show you something. If you were going to jump in the air, wouldn't you crouch first? Yeah, you know, so I think most of you wouldn't do this and jump. You'd probably rev up. Right? So I did 2 squashes, right? Before I stretched and leapt. I'm going to actually have us do that to the cube. All right. I think the way I want to do it, though, as we've done a few times, is we're going to start with the larger motion and then break it down. Okay. So your tween's on, right? Let's do 2 things along the way. I'm going to guess around, it's going to take, between the squashing and the jumping, it'll probably take roughly, say, 30 frames before it actually reaches the sky, right? And since it's not doing any squashing or anything, you know, we'll give it another, let's do 25 and 25. It's going to go in the air, come down, be very boring, and then we'll see why we need squash and stretch and why we need all the timing. So let's start there. Your tween is on. Now, I'd like you to make sure that you could see not only the whole stage, but like I said earlier, a little above it. You might need to use these to back up a bit. All right. So I'd like you to bring your playhead out to frame 25 and take that cube, because now you can get it with 1 click, and drag it straight up. If you want help making sure it's going straight up, hold down Shift while you do it. I want it to totally leave the stage. It's in the air. What goes up must come down. So now we're going to go out to frame 50, the end of the timeline, and bring it back down. So let's move on over. Bring the playhead over. That's always very important, right? To tell it when. So by frame 50, we want to bring it back down. So I'm going to take it and bring it back down. So one of the things I love about classic tweening is the way it makes keyframes for you, which I think is pretty great. Let's see what we've got. Let's just go back to the beginning. Yes?
If you want frame 50 to be visible, you create the blank keyframes from frame 1 to frame 51.
Did you F5 earlier to extend the timeline?
Yeah, I put from frame 1 up to frame 50, create blank keyframes. No, sorry, it was.
No. That means you have a bunch of little circles there, right?
Yeah, but I can paint.
No, you don't want that. So can you try Command Zing, see if you can get back to before you created all those blank keyframes? Do a few Command Z's, tell me if you can get back.
No, I can create the motion tween. That's all right. It's just that the last keyframe, the last frame.
You know what? Let's screen share it, right? I'm going to stop my share. Right? Can you turn on your screen sharing? Joseph, are you on a Mac or Windows?
Windows.
So when you click screen share, choose screen. It's going to give you some options. Just choose screen.
Yeah, hold on. All right. Screen share.
All right.
So,
gotcha. So just click there and just F5. Don't insert blank keyframes. And I'm going to tell you what the difference is. I want you to just F5. You might have to hold. Are you on a laptop?
Yeah.
So you have to hold down your function key and tap F5.
Yeah, did it.
There's no keyframe there. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, sorry. Blah, 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 blah. You're right. Do it again. I'm sorry. Do both. I could tell this at the end of the week because my brain is starting to melt. There you go. That's all.
Okay, sorry
Really
about
easy to
that.
do. But Joe, before you stop screen sharing, could you go back to frame 1 and turn on, of just the cube layer, turn on your classic tween?
Sorry.
Go back to frame 1 of the cube layer and turn on your classic tween. So it should turn purple.
Oh yeah, no, that part I understood. It was just that
That's
I
the
wasn't.
part you skipped?
No, yeah, I understood that part. It was just I
Okay.
was wondering why it was
Gotcha.
why my keyframe was silent. That's all.
Okay. And then you bring the playhead to 25. You clear about that part to
Yeah.
get it in the air? Okay. Listen, guys, I really appreciate that Joe asks questions. The guy's obviously super intelligent. He's always asking good questions. I don't want anybody in here to be shy about asking a question, you know. So your box should be launched, right? Go back to frame 1, hit return. It's going rather slowly up and mechanically, straight up, straight down. Feels more like an elevator, right?
Screen isn't showing right now.
What's that?
Your screen isn't showing.
Oh, okay. I was having a great day. All right. Share screen. A lot to juggle. You see it now? Do you guys
Yeah.
see my screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, excellent. All right. So here's my cube, right? Very mechanical. And this is very similar to what we've been doing most of the semester, at least since we started tweening. Things go at an even speed. Really, almost nothing in nature really moves at a constant speed. You know, very, very little, right? So that's not good enough, but we got to start. We know what our goal is. Let's begin by having this thing do that little anticipation. So I'm using one of the 12 principles right now. And how do you anticipate a big movement? What lets you know what's about to happen? You know, if someone's at a cowboy event and they sit on the bull and the bull's jumping around before they let them loose in the ring, that's an anticipation moment. Could you guys join me? Do you remember how earlier today we used option dragging or alt dragging to copy a keyframe? We did that for the sake of making a pause. And, you know, again, we have one person who's using a tablet, and he was saying his tablet doesn't have the alt key. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. But typically, you'd hold down alt or option. This is what I want you to do. I want you to hold down your alt key, your option key, copy that first keyframe. So it's about, well, let's say 5 frames over. Now I'm going to need another copy, another 5 frames over. So I'm on a Mac, I'm holding down option. I'm on the timeline on the cube layer, and I'm copying this about 5 frames over. Why? Well, the cube starts this way. It's going to squash. But by the time it gets to frame 10, I want it to return. This way I'm guaranteeing that I'm going to get it back to its original shape. You should be seeing 3 keyframes laid out like mine just now, right? I want you to return to the middle one and get the transform tool. That's this particular tool on the toolbar. You could even press Q, I believe, to find it. Now, this is our first attempt at squashing together. Oh, you know something? Really, there are these little steps that I'm kind of skipping out on today. You know, Tiffany, I wanted them to move the this point, but it's a little late now. We're going to try to work it without it. Okay, let's squash this. I want you to stretch the sides. We're going to need to bring this down a little bit because I accidentally lifted into the air. If you rewind, you should see there's your frame 1. It comes along, it squashes, and then it returns to its shape. So I want to point something out. Squash down, but it stretches to the side. Did that work for you guys? Did it? Did? You know, guys, listen. I realize that we got a little.
Professor, do you mind repeating the process again?
You know something?
I feel like I got the stream wrong.
And to tell you to something beyond that, I'm not happy with this whole demonstration. Between my weird screen, not recording, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not happy with any of it. So I'm going to ask you all to join me on a rather unusual move. We're going to tell the whole file to revert, right? We're going to do it all together in a smarter way, right? right? So I'm going to ask everybody to join me on this. A lot of programs let you do this. So you're in Animate. I want you to go up to the File menu and note this, called Revert. Now, what Revert does is it reverts to the last saved version. So I'm hoping that no one saved since you opened it. So if we do File menu Revert, it's going to say, revert to the last saved version? Yeah, let's just start over. Let's click Revert.
So you want us to start the whole thing over?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. Mostly because I made a bunch of
How do
errors.
you do that again?
You go to the File menu, and then you'll see under the File menu, it says Revert. So it looks like this. File menu, Revert. Mine's gray because I just reverted. Do you see that, Marilia? If you
Yes.
don't, you do see it. All right, great. So everyone started over with me? Yes?
Are you
Yes.
sure?
Yes.
Start it over.
All right. Okay. So, all right. Some of you know exactly where I'm going since I actually did it a couple times. Let's extend the timeline. So I'm going to frame 50 of one layer, and I'm tapping my F5. Got the long gray bar. Let's go underneath it and do the same F5 trick. Now we are definitely experts at F5. How'd that go, Joe? Cool. All right. Now let's create that symbol, right? So let's get the cube. We didn't do any tweening yet, right? So it's fine, as long as you make your symbol before you turn on your tween. So we got to go back to frame 1 because that's where the cube is, and in that keyframe. So going back to frame 1. Now, I can't even see my stage, so I'm going to use this magnifying thing first. In the top right, show frame. I mean, I'm going to back up some more because I couldn't even get to my cube. All right, select your cube. This is considered a brand new document. Select your cube and then control click or right click, convert to symbol. Name it and okay it. So we've got a 50 frame timeline. We've got a cube that is now a graphic symbol, happy in its library, right? Now, I want to tell you what I didn't like about my demonstration last time. Just take a peek at this, right? This is not anything you want to join me. There's a point there, some people call the axis or the transformation point. Let me call it the axis. And it's going to cause us trouble if we don't move it. I want to show you something. Do you notice if I spin this object, it's spinning around the middle? Now, there's something I don't like about that. This is the axis. Now, the transform tool, I'd like you to get this tool with me right now. The free transform tool is the only tool that lets you do this. I'm taking the axis, this white dot here, and I'm carefully bringing it down to this corner of the cube. And the reason I like that is later on, if I want it to bounce around, it's going to bounce around from the bottom. Now, I often forget that, and I hate that because I've done it only a million times. But the reason that I really care is every time a new keyframe shows up, because you F6'd or any of the other methods, they're all going to agree on that axis. If the axis is in different spots, your object's going to move around very erratically. I want to make sure it hits the ground on the bottom, that if it swivels from the bottom. So this is something that we're going to have to repeat pretty often, right? So you have to make your symbol first, which you did, get the transform tool, and move the axis to the bottom. Did you guys find it? So I think what I'm going to do, so I don't keep on asking you, I'm just going to assume it works unless someone tells me otherwise.
Yeah, it worked.
Tiffany.
It worked.
Thank you, Daniela. All right. So this is what I skipped, and this was going to make the whole demonstration harder, so I'm glad that I decided not to do it. Let's go out to frame 25 now. Oh, sorry. We didn't turn on the tween. Let's turn on the tween. So the object's a symbol. We even move the axis, but it's time to turn on our classic tween. So you go to that keyframe, control click it, create classic tween. All right. All right, we're pretty good now. Let's deal with that business of getting it to go in the air. So I'm going to start like I did last time, but going to frame 25. Then I drag it in the air. And since we turned on the classic tween just before, it made a keyframe. So I'll be able to do anything I want with this later. So all I've got is this. It just goes up in the air in frame 25. But we want to bring it down in frame 50. So let's go over to frame 50, bring the playhead there, and bring that object back to the floor. I like to hold down shift so it doesn't swivel around. So we've got an elevation, right? And we have it coming back down. But as I was saying earlier, it's rather mechanical, and we want to bring some life to it. I'd like you to do your best to make sure we've got that much done. All right, I think we're ready for that squash. And it's going to be much easier because we move the axis point. Let's go back to frame 1. All right, this is going to take a bunch of steps. So go back to frame 1. This was the part where I wanted everyone to make 2 copies. And I'm starting rather randomly with a 5-frame interval. So here's my keyframe. I'm holding down Option on my Mac, and I'm pressing and dragging that keyframe over to frame 5. On Windows, Alt. Keep it down the whole time, and I'm going to copy it now to frame 10. This is a trick that I do really often. I know the first frame and the third frame are the same. The one in the middle is where it's going to squash. So I'm just going to do that one more time on Command-Z. So to pull this off, I had to copy this exact keyframe, very much like a pause, like we did earlier today. When you got 3, go back to the middle one. Now, if you're not in the transform tool, go get it. This tool now is going to do exactly what I want. When I squash, it stays on the ground. So I'm going to squash it, I think a little bit this time, and then the second time will be a much more severe squash. But you do have to widen it. I want to say something very important about that. This is visual. The mass of an object doesn't change. You know, if you go on a radical diet or you eat too much, it changes. But by and large, your mass is the same. If you squash, you got to stretch out so that mass has somewhere to go. So here's the object, but if it squashes, it stretches in the other direction. So this is what we've got now. Right? A very convincing squash before it launches. I think it'll be more fun though. Here, play yours. Why not? Bring it back to the beginning and just play it. It's already a little bit better. Not good enough though, so I'm going to bring it back. So if you've been following with me, I want you to find that third keyframe. This is when it's returned to its original shape. What I'm going to do is the exact same trick. I'm going to copy twice again. This time the middle one's going to be even squashier. So here I am. I'm going to Option drag 5 frames over, and then another 5 frames over. 1, 2, 3. It's the middle one here. Now this is going to be the big one. You did one little stretch, so to speak, and the next time you're really going down because you're going to launch. So this is middle keyframe here. Let's squash this one way down. And the thing is, that's a lot of mass. This object is going to look like it just got smaller, and it's not what I want. So once I squash it that much, I better stretch it out in an also exaggerated way. Remember, the next keyframe, you copied the original object, so it's going to look like that. Boom. So if you rewind it now, see what happens. There'll be one little squash, return, then a second bigger squash, then a return, and then it's up in the air. Now, I kind of like it, but I don't like the timing, and I want to make a suggestion about it. It's too bad you can't play these in slow motion. It would help. But I think when it comes down, especially the second time, here it comes, I think it should pause. You know, imagine yourself squashing, you're getting ready, come back up, you squash the second time, building some tension and some anticipation, and then, choom, All right. So we know how to make a pause. And I know earlier, you know, Joe was suggesting that it's going to affect the timing after it. Let's take one step at a time. I want you to find your squash. This one, your last squash. And we're going to make it pause. So we're going to hold down Option again, or Alt, and drag this over a few frames. Now, I don't have a lot of room, but I think that's enough. It's going to be a little pause. It's too close, though, to its return. But if you have that same situation that I have, you could F5 even here, and it should add frames right in between these, even though they're back to back. So I created a little pause for it in this little gap. I'm going to bring it back to see if that's any better. It is a little bit better. You know, I don't want to be too picky, but I kind of feel like the first squash should pause also. Anybody else feel that way? It just feels too like.
I don't think it should squash, because I feel like if you add too much of a pause on the first one, I feel like it might make it repetitive.
You know, he's got a really good point. You know, he wants to kind of save that. So I think what I'd do, Matthew, to satisfy that is maybe the first pause could be a little briefer, you know, just a little pause, you know, and then the second one would be longer. Don't feel like you have to go every step with this one. I'm going to pause mine. So anyone who's interested, I'm going back to the first squash and I'm going to pause it a little bit. And we don't have to agree on every step. So here's that first squash. And I don't like how immediate it comes back. So I'm finding that keyframe. It's just the second keyframe on the timeline. And I'm going to Option drag it over. Just a little pause this time, a little less. And I'm going to add some frames just after it with F5. So here's my little pause and a big one. And I think that's feeling a lot better. Oh, I lost my floor. I'm going to fix that. I think that's quite a bit better. I'm going to fix the floor, but I want to say something to you about all this. You could see how important it is. At first, it sounds kind of goofy. You know, if I'd only made him squash once and launch, there would have been no anticipation, really. If I didn't make it pause, the timing feels wrong. So what I'm predicting is those of you who really love this stuff are going to spend ridiculous amounts of time perfecting the timing. Oh, an instant more, you know, 1 frame more, 2 frames more. We're talking 20/4 of a second, but it's going to make all the difference, all the difference. I don't know, did anyone else have the disappearing floor problem? So you probably know how to fix it, but I'm going to clarify it. You know, since I'm adding frames to the top layer, the bottom layer is getting left behind, right? It's very easy to fix, and at some point I'll show you ways to avoid it. But right now, I'd rather just fix it. So if at the end of your animation, the floor disappears, you'll see the problem right away. The lower layer doesn't have enough frames. All about F5. If your lower layer disappears, match the upper layer's length.
Oh.
Click in that frame and F5 it. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I also encountered this issue like a long time ago, but then I kind of figured it out by just like pressing like the command key and then hovering over towards the edge and dragging it even further.
To change the length? That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's interesting. I want to try that because I know some people do that.
Yeah, like once you get kind of like over towards the edge of it,
This
you
made a
kind of like...
keyframe, which I really don't want. Do you have a keyframe at the end?
No, I just kind of like, you know, press the command key or...
Oh, yeah?
Or reach kind of like closer toward the edge where you can see the pole.
Oh, I like it. I
yeah.
got it. It worked.
Yeah.
I just learned something new. Eduardo, I like that. You know,
I just came by it on accident like earlier.
You must be an artist. That's the way artists learn things. From crazy accidents. Once I smashed a cup of coffee into this painting I worked all night on. I freaked, and then a minute later I noticed, oh, it's so much better with the coffee on it. Anyway, thanks, Eduardo. So you could use F5 or Eduardo's method, which is pretty cool. But make sure your layers are the same length if you don't want something to disappear. All right, so we've got a little squash and stretch going. We brought a lot of life into it. Now, the other thing that I'm feeling about this particular one is I think it just comes down too fast. You know, like I'm going to hide off stage for a minute so you could see something. Right? There's no anticipation when it's in the air. I love that kind of idea that it's so high up in the air that the person's waiting. Is it going to come down again? So let's fix that. So we want to now find the keyframe where it reaches its peak. I don't know what frame yours is, but it's probably around 35. So you want to find that black dot, that keyframe that represents it being in the air. It's funny. We're doing a lot of pauses today, right? I don't have to make it go higher because no one's going to see that, right? It really doesn't matter what it does when it's off stage, but I want them to wait, right? So I think what I'd like to do, I'm getting a little look at it right here, is we got a long gap to work with, and I want it to be a long wait. So if this is the keyframe that represents it up in the air, hold down Option or Alt, and drag it not just 5 frames, not just 10, how about the whole 15 frames? To be honest with you, I love real exaggeration. I might make someone wait an entire second for that. Which I do believe no, that would be even further. I'm going to try this. So I'm going to play it and see if that pause makes it any more interesting. If you want to see for yourself whether that created any kind of drama at all, I want to remind you of a feature. We barely use this thing. If you look above the stage and on the right, there's this little thing that says click content outside the stage, right? I'm going to click it. This time when it reaches the sky, it's going to be like the audience sees. I don't see it. Where'd it go? Is it, oh. That pause was not nearly long enough, was it? Now I want to add something to it. I hope I'm not going too fast. But here's the idea. This was the keyframe where it hit the air. I held down Option and I dragged it all the way to here to create a pause. So I got about, I don't know, 15, 16 frame pause. But I really just don't feel like it's dramatic enough. Here is it looping so you could really see. You know, went off stage for an instant, but just not long enough. So I'm not going to do any more option dragging. I'm going to use F5. That's because this frame, with the object up here, funny that it looks gone there. Oh, it's right, the clip. There we go. So this is the frame where it's in the air. You might want to release that little button. You know, just to preview, really. This is the copy I made when I option dragged it. Do you remember how we click between frames to F5 and just stretch them out? I already made the pause. So all I'm going to do is stretch the pause out. If you've got a successful pause and it's not long enough for your taste, you're going to click in between in F5. So I'm going to lose the lower layer, and I'm just going to fix that. I'm going to click in between these two, and I'm going to F5 a lot this time. I'm clicking in there, and I'm just getting crazy with it. So I'm going, it was in the air around frame 35. I'm taking it all the way out to frame 65. It's going to be over a second. It's going to be a very long pause here. If you notice you're losing your bottom layer, you already know how to fix it. And F5. This is a slightly strenuous exercise, but it's the closest we've come so far to an actual animation. So this is what I've got. That's nice. Really much more dramatic. And to be really honest, I'd be tempted to go even further, just F5 like all hell. Make the audience really wonder, is that thing ever coming back down? I just don't know. But I think this right now is going to suit our purposes. Anybody have a question so far? All right, you guys still feel like you're in control? You know, the beauty of the classroom as I walk around, it's easier for me to tell if anyone's stressing, things aren't happening. Here I kind of just sort of depend on reactions. All right, so what else can we do? By the way, if you'd like to preview like mine, you see it looping in the back, looping over there, you could also, I just made a temporary Swift file, which we haven't done recently, but you could try it with me right now if you like. If you'd like to try that preview method, right? On a Mac, it's Command Return. On Windows, I just have to unfortunately, it's not opening at the right size, so I'm gonna have to fix that. But I could see the gist of it, and I could study it because it just keeps looping. On a Mac, that's Command Return. On Windows, I believe it's Control Enter. I do this very often in the middle of working just to see how it's going. This is a little better than I expected because I didn't think I would like it at all because the launch is at a totally equal speed and it falls at a completely equal speed, which nature doesn't do. So I want to introduce something brand new today to deal with that speed, which I think is going to make it quite a bit better. I'm going to close this Swift. All right. I want to talk about ease in and ease out. And before we try it, I want to show you something. So there's this little list on the handout based on the movie we watched before the break. Now, when those guys made that movie and when they invented the 12 principles, there was no tweening. They didn't have tweening yet. So they really had to do everything frame by frame, but they had the same logic. So they called it slow in, slow out. We're gonna call it ease in and ease out. There's the same principle, slow in. Now, what does that even mean? Say you were in a car, right? And you had, you like to go really, really fast, right? You're on the Autobahn in Germany. There's no speed limit, right? You still start at 0 miles per hour, right? You press on the gas and you're up and it's 1 mile per hour. It's 10 miles per hour. You're finally cruising at 60 miles an hour until you reach 100 miles an hour. That's ease in. That's slow in, right? That's you're starting slow and you're gaining speed. So that's you when you run. That's you on your bicycle. That's your dog. You know what I mean? That's most things on the ground. Anyway, starting slow and speeding up. Now, the thing in this particular case is gravity changes it. If that object launches into the air, whatever makes it stop? Why doesn't it just keep going into space? Clearly, gravity's pulling on it, right? So if it has enough force, it manages to get in the air. But gravity's trying to pull it all the time. So what happens is, at a given point, its momentum is not strong enough to defy gravity. So gravity starts to win, and it slows down. It slows down. Doesn't speed up, it slows down, right? So that's ease out. Let's see how we do it, and let's see if it's worth it. All right, let's get back. Let me get back. So we got to find the part of the timeline now where it got in the air. So here's the part where it got in the air. Now, in my case, it's going from here to here, right? It's very, very short. This is literally from 29 to 34. Mine, it's mere 5 frames. The funny thing is, we're not experiencing that as too short. It's kind of interesting that the way in the air feels pretty reasonable. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to try to work with that tiny, tiny gap because it's feeling kind of right. Let me find it again. So this is it. Can you find yours? I'm going to ask you to click in between those keyframes. This is brand new. So Animate has an automatic feature that tells you whether it should ease in, start slow, or ease out, which is end slow. We want it to end slow as it reaches the sky. Right? So you've clicked between the 2 keyframes that represent that launch anywhere in there, and I'd like you to find your way to the property palette. The properties palette should be on your right where it usually is. If you ever accidentally close it, remember, all the palettes live here, the window menu. They're all in one place. Okay, so you clicked in a tween. You come over here to the area of the properties palette called Tweening. And I want you to notice Effect Classic Ease. Can you please click on this? This is pretty cool. And this has changed quite a bit in the last year. But I'm kind of loving it. So ease out means slow down on the end, on the outside of the movement. So let's click on ease out. And that's represented by this convex curve. And you notice these features on the right make that curve bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Right? Oh, this one doesn't, right? So we're going to start with quad, see if we can even tell it. What it's basically saying is slow down at the end, but not too much. We're going to see if that's enough. So you chose ease out, you chose quad, and you hit return or enter to accept it. So if you play it, it should slow down on the way up, but it was a little hard to tell. So I think I want to try that again, and I kind of expected that. So we're going to keep on coming back. You might want to remember the frame number so it's easy to get back. I'm in the 30s over here. Click back in. Ease out is correct. We just need it to be more forceful. So I click in the tween. I'm coming back to that effect. Now it's called quad ease out. Click it. And I'm going to go down to cubic. I think I'm going to go all the way to this one called quart. And hit return or enter. Each time, I'm going to come back and play it and see if I could sense the difference. I'm going to actually play the Swift. Guys, listen, I'm going to do something, but I don't want you to join me on this one.
Interesting.
Right? Could you watch something for a minute? I think it's going to help you understand this even better. So give me a moment. I'm going to do a quick demo. I want to make sure that everybody sees it, so I'm actually exaggerating this quite a bit. Guys, you watching? Someone's got their mic on. If you wouldn't mind turning it off. Thank you. All right. So here's the mechanical usual tween. Right? Very, very even. I click anywhere between those end frames, anywhere inside the purple tween. And I'm going to come here and do what you just did. I'm turning on my ease out, and I'm choosing quart, and I'm going to say return. Let's see what this looks like now. Ready? Did you see it slow down?
Yeah.
Right? So the real question is, how helpful is this when there's only 5 frames? You know, your teacher's, you know, trying to explore it. And if we don't get enough satisfaction out of it, maybe the cube doesn't need it. You know? All right. I want to come back to the cube and watch it one more time. If you want to study yours with me, Command Return on your Mac or Control Enter on Windows and watch it a bunch of times. I really don't know why this Swift's open in this strange shape, but you'll have to kind of stretch things out yourself to see the right spot. It's subtle, but I do think it's superior. I think we'll get a little more interest on the way down. We want to do a different kind of easing for the way down. We definitely don't want it to go at an even speed. All right. Now, before we do it, I want to make some points. So how would speed operate from here? You know, once it's actually in the air, you know, what speed would it fall? Well, here's the thing. Remember, it's still fighting to some degree with its original momentum. You know, gravity's starting to win, right? But its original momentum is not completely dissipated. So that basically means even the fall might start a little slow in this case, right? Because it wants to fall at this stage. Gravity's pulling it down, right? And yet, you know, gravity's pulling it down, but at the same time, the momentum is still kind of pushing it up. So I think when it falls, it would fall slow at first and then go, right? It's not going to be like an elevator. It's going to be like, so in this case, we do want it to start slow. Ease in. Go easy on the in part, right? So it's going to start slow. So this is what I'd like you to do. We're going to do this a few times, similar things anyway. Find the two keyframes. Here's the one in the sky. Here's the one where it hits the ground. Oh, that's a pause, isn't it? Hang on a second there. Let me come back. Up. Make sure that you're being very exact about it. I almost got cocky and guessed. All right, here's the fall. All right, it's the last pair. Click inside of it. So every time you want to change that kind of speed, you want it to be an unequal speed, you're going to click in your tween, you know, between the keyframes. So I found the pair I want, I'm clicking in between. All right, let's come over here again, click on the classic ease button. The hardest part for me is imagining it. And I'm trying to imagine what the speed would be. And I do believe the early part of this drop is going to go easy before it speeds up. So I'm going to say ease in. I'm going to go with chord again. It's just easier to spot. It's a little more exaggerated. And I'm going to hit return. Let's see if that worked. Oh, I like that quite a bit. Now, this is just getting better. It's subtle, but it's getting quite a bit better. It looks like a very over-anxious cube that just keeps on hopping in the air. So I think we're going to need to revisit ease in and ease out. I don't find it the easiest thing to, you know, master, but it's definitely worth it. You know, nature just doesn't move at a constant speed. Frankly, the subway doesn't move at a constant speed. You know, it's hard to think about what actually does. The only thing that does, they're always mechanical. There's nothing natural that I could think of. They say light moves at a constant speed, right? But other than light itself, I guess sound too. But the wind doesn't, you don't, you know, so we're really going to have to deal with when do things speed up and when do they slow down. We're going to do some experiments before the day's over to get to know easing better. But I want to tell you what I like least about this animation, the way it lands on the ground.
Professor?
Yes, Joe?
I deleted a keyframe in order to like link two different keyframes. Like there were 3 keyframes and I deleted the one in the middle, trying to see if they would connect the other 2, but I'm not sure how to do it.
Okay, let me show you real quickly. I'm going to just borrow something that I have. So if I made a keyframe here, say I F6'd it, right? For no apparent reason, or maybe for a reason, right? Maybe I thought this was a good idea, right? So what I've got now is this. Which is pretty great, actually. But if I change my mind about that, I'll go find the keyframe I don't want. All right, this is cool. I'm glad you asked. One way to do it is to control click or right click the keyframe itself and choose clear keyframe. Joe, I want you to be very clear. Don't choose remove frame because that'll change all your timing. Clear keyframe means keep the frame, just make it be not a keyframe. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So clear the keyframe, keep my tween, but just ditch this one keyframe.
Gotcha.
And it's gone. Very good question. Clear keyframe is a sophisticated thing that we're going to have to keep returning to. Before we deal with how the object lands and what should happen, does anyone else have any questions yet? All right. I'm hoping you guys are finding this a little bit more, you know, engaging than just the graphics we were doing. We're really trying to deal with gravity and a 3-dimensional object in space. All right, let's get a look at the end. So the object comes down and it hits the floor. Now that's pretty weird you know, this object we know is flexible. We know at the beginning it's squashed and stretched twice. With all that momentum as it finally get maximum speed and then hit the floor, it would have to squash, right? So can you get to your last frame where your cube hits the ground? And make sure you're not early all the way over that last keyframe. And again, it's all about the transform tool. So we're using that tool a lot today. Click your object. Now I want to remind you, the way we did this before was we made 2 following keyframes. So we had 3 cubes in time, and it was the middle one that we squashed. So I'm going to do the same thing, even though I see I'm going to have to fix the lower layer, no problem. So I'm going to take this keyframe and I'm going to copy it. Option, I think I'm going to go 5 frames over. I'm going to option drag it again, another 5 frames. So I want you to remember that these 3 are identical, right? And that's the idea. They're identical. I'm going to come back and fix the ground, but I'm not ready for it. First, middle, last. It's the middle one that we're going to squash. We might want to do this more than once, but you know, I think I'm going to try to make it bounce after this. But let's start with a squash. So here's the original. I option dragged to here and to here. Then I go to the middle. All right. I'm going to drag this down for a squash. The mass has to be accommodated, so I'm going to take the side out. It's still got the same total size, it's just squashed. So now on the way down, this happens. That's quite a bit better. And if you want to extend the floor, use your F5 trick. I'm going to do it again. All right. So I'm going to Command Z for anyone who would like to just see it one more time. Couldn't blame you. Doing a bunch of Command Zing here. I could fix it in other ways, but I'm just backing up. So this was the original landing, right? We really had no sense of mass, right? And I wanted to do this trick where I make the 2 copies. And it's not always 5 frames, you know, you're going to develop your own sense of timing. I'm just starting with that. So on my Mac, I'm holding down Option, I'm going 5 frames over, and I'm making my second duplicate, 5 frames over. It's the middle one that I'm going to squash and stretch. And then I'm going to fix the ground. I'm using F5. Oops, accidentally hit the wrong key. All right. Pretty cool. I'm just sort of curious. I'm not saying that we can necessarily do it, but does anyone feel like that box should do anything more when it hits the ground? You know, just turn on your mic.
Crash it to the floor?
Yeah, right. When it hits the floor, do you feel like it should do something other than just squash?
Yeah, I said crash.
Crash. So, you know, to tell you the truth, Naftali, you know, what I was thinking was, you know, without dealing with having it break into pieces or something like that, which would be like a whole other, you know, challenge, it would bounce. Even a brick would bounce. You know, clearly, even a cardboard box would bounce, but they'd all bounce differently. You know, if we had a rubber ball, a brick, and a cardboard box, you know, you imagine in your head, the rubber ball would have to bounce a bunch of times, right? So there'd be a bunch of work involved. The brick, probably once or twice. You know, it wouldn't get very high off the ground, that's all. You know, the brick hits the ground, it'd be like that. The ball would be like that, right? What about a box? I don't know.
Professor, can I show you what I have for now? Because I think I have something similar to that.
Yeah, let's. I'm going to turn off my screen sharing and do my best to remember to turn it back on. All right. Your turn. Oh, hang on a second here. I got something in the way on my end. There we go. Yeah, really nice. Play that again.
No, sure. Wait.
That's pretty good. You know, I think I love it. But you know, one thing I think might be extra cool, if it tilted a little bit as it bounced, because the chances of that box being perfectly even in weight is kind of slim. So I think it would probably tilt just a little. The question is exactly when would it do that? Listen, I want to say something to everybody. I bet a lot of you guys are experimenting as you become more sensitive to what we're doing. Thanks for sharing, Joe. I think that's right on target. You know, really, you know, listen, I'm going to spill the beans a little bit. What I'm going to ask people to do for homework, we're going to look at closer on the handout later, is to make two balls, two separate balls, interact in some way. So everybody's going to have a different way how they want to do it. Are they going to be bouncing around and hit each other? You know, or is one going to swallow the other one? I don't know, you know, but it's all going to be about classic tweening, timing, and bouncing. I think you're very ready for it. I chose to do ball for the homework because it's a little bit easier than doing the cube, but the logic is the same. You know, just less drawing time, basically. Hey, does anybody else have something they want to share? You know, if you like it a lot or you did something unexpected. Nobody just yet?
I mean, this is pretty fun so far. I'm really enjoying it. So.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. Yeah, let me take a look. Oh, really? You just started screen sharing. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? An avocado. A blue one. Joe, you know, I like a lot of it. I particularly like the tint changing. You know, I think the thing you want to focus on going forward is smoothness and some kind of movement that makes some kind of sense. You know, the object's tweening, that's true. It's changing location, but it feels random. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why it's moving. You know, the cube, the way we treated it, we could tell its intention. I know that's kind of funny, talking about a cube having intention. But as soon as it started to squash, we knew what it was going to go in the air. You know, even after the first squash, we knew what was going to happen. And that's anticipation. Now, one thing you got to do for your audience is give them something they could follow. So you got the object moving. If you'd stop the screen sharing for a minute, so I want to move forward, but thanks for sharing. The thing you want to go to next, though, is to have someone want to follow it. You know, so if it's just kind of like, you know, random, no one wants to follow it. So what feels reasonable? For example, here's my box right now, right? My little stage I'm in. So if my finger just goes, but what if it does this? You know, your mind accepts that, right? There's some kind of, you know, logic to it. Or if it does that. You know, it's not random. It kind of reflects things you've seen before. You know, the way things bounce, the way things move. You know what I mean, Marilia? So that would be the next thing. Right. Rogelio, did you want to save something or just express enthusiasm?
I was just expressing enthusiasm.
And I so appreciate it. I really do. So listen, guys, I'm going to try to do a bounce together. I could have Joseph teach this part and I could leave early, but I'm going to try it with you. So let me just move some stuff around for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen again. I almost forgot. All right, so we came down here and it squashed and it came back up like that. I have an idea. And honestly, I'm really not sure if this is exactly what I want, but I want to try it, right? Let's copy this one more time with the option drag trick. So basically, I want you to copy that end frame, maybe 5 frames or more over. Not really quite sure how far. I'm going to go with 5 frames. When I'm not sure, it's my go-to, right? I'm going to also, so this frame was just copied to here. I want you to go beneath it though and fix that lower layer with your F5 or any method you've discovered. So this is what I'm thinking. Here, it's squashed. It returned to its original shape. But what if I lifted that in the air and rotated it a little bit? Remember, I got this frame on the end to bring it down to the ground. So what I'm saying is, since we copied the end frame, we know it's going to get back to the floor. I want to take this one with the transform tool. So what I want to do is, I'm going to bring it up in the air a bit. I think I'm going to even rotate it just a smidgen. And let's see what that feels like. Nice. I'm going to do it again, but I do want to mention, I really do believe it deserves 2 bounces. And if I am going to do this tilt thing, when it hits and bounces again, the second bounce won't be quite as high, but it's going to tilt the other way. So it's going to be like, boom. Let's see how that goes. I'm going to Command Z a couple times for anyone who missed it, who would like to see that again. All right, so this is where I was before, right? It hits the ground, it squashes, which is pretty cool, but now I'm focusing on the bounce. If you got it the first time, that's great. If not, check this out. So I'm going to copy it because this is where I want it to end, you know? So to make sure I don't have to figure that out, I'm going to copy it over here. So I'm using my option trick. By the way, in this case, F6 would work. There's no tween here. So F6 would copy the last keyframe. In this one case, it's the same as option dragging it. I'm going to fix the ground, right? I don't want keyframes down here, so I've been using F5. Keyframes are when you need the art to be there, copies of the art. All right, in any case, however you lengthen this layer is okay. So now I got these 2 end frames. So here is the squash. It comes back up. And this is identical. This is the one I want to raise. I'm using my transform tool. So I'm thinking the first bounce would probably be the biggest. I'm going to take it about here. I'm going to rotate it just a little, you know, bounced off the floor in an uneven way. And it's going to come down to this frame, which we already know is on the floor. I'm going to make it bounce again, tilt the other way, but not go quite that high, a little bit less. Same trick. I'm going to option drag it over or F6 it over. I'm going to fix the lower layer with F5. All right, so we know these 2 are the same. I'm going to this one. I'm going to raise this one just a little bit. And I'm going to rotate it the other way. So I'm going to have a bigger bounce and a little bounce. Didn't like it. I got to check that out. Up, I like that. Comes down. I don't like that at all. I'm going to end early because I think I'm too tired to do this well. Let's see. This came down, up in the air, comes down, but it hits the ground like that. Is that okay with me? I don't know. Let me Command Z that. This was good. All right. I think I'm going to copy it twice. That was my mistake. I needed to go back in the air and come down, so I need 2 keyframes. And I was just being lazy. I'm going to option drag it here, here. I'm going to extend the bottom. So I got these 3 frames are in the same again. That pattern just keeps repeating, so I should have known better. This is the one. A little up, a little over. That ought to do it. Oh yeah. I'm happy now. So guys, listen, you might want to save this one, you know? I think I should have had everyone save it sooner because I'm worried that if any of you had a crash, what would we do? So I really would be much more conservative if I had everyone save every few minutes. I'm going to save mine for the first time. Why don't you join me? So, you know, the truth of it is, we don't need to change its name or anything. So all you have to do is a regular save. It's going to be in the same folder. So Command S, Control S, or just plain old file menu save. I also suggest, if you feel ready, that you get a look at a preview. You know, check out a Swift. That's Command Return again, or Control Enter if you're on Windows. Command Return or Control Enter, just so you could see it over and over. See how much you like it. Now look, if you got half of what we did today, you're doing great, because I pushed the pedal harder than I have before. If you got everything, you're doing awesome. 50% great, 100% awesome. This stuff is complicated. You have to be patient with yourself. I'm going to be repeating very similar things next week, and I'm probably going to add how you'd make it move on a path. You know, maybe we'll do a rocket. I really want to do leaves falling because they're so beautiful. So I think we'll probably do that next week. Does anybody have any questions about this that we did today, you know, that you'd like to ask? Anything related to it before I talk up the homework?
No.
No? So, you know, despite me doing the beginning of this demo 3 or 4 times because I couldn't remember to record or to screen share, I'm pretty pleased with it. I'm glad it's all on YouTube because I know myself, if I was a student, I would probably go to YouTube at some point and watch the last hour, you know, when this started. I think we came back from the break about 5 after 11. We sort of got busy around then, guess the last hour and a half. Okay, I'm going to just talk up the homework a little bit. I already introduced it, but I want to be a little bit more specific. I do want to mention that I already knew this morning that I wasn't going to do motion guides, that I wanted to bump them to next class. So don't worry about it. You won't miss this stuff. I'm just going to move it to our next handout. No big deal. The homework box is always at the end. Let's take a good look at it. Hey, Mihar. Hi. All right. So make 2 balls bounce in one single animation using classic tweening. Make them relate in some important way. So let's get one idea off the ground. They each have to be on a separate layer. There's no way to tween 2 objects going in different directions on one layer, right? They literally have to be. So it's going to be something like this in terms of getting started. The size, pretty much to you. Let me just get back in here. My computer is starting to resent me, needs a break. There we go. So like, you'll want to do obviously something more meaningful, but if you've got a ball on one layer, you're going to have to make another layer for the other one. And just remember that each one is going to have to be made into a symbol. Right, you know the rest, right? I'd probably F5 out here. Now, I don't want to take it any further, but just remember, you're going to need multiple layers. Use as many layers as you want. You know, if you're feeling the need for a big challenge, think big. If you want to just get confident in these fundamental steps, think a little smaller. You know, judge for yourself. The whole idea is, how would the 2 balls relate? I don't want any random movements. I don't really want it to look like some kind of weird electron that we just have no idea how it behaves. You know, it's a ball. You know, balls bounce. And what do they do if they hit each other? Do you want things that are ball-like? You know, or something going on at a bowling alley? I really, if you want to get somewhat abstract, I don't mind, as long as it includes the kind of physics we've been discussing. You know, things affect each other. If you want to get literal, you got a specific kind of ball you want to deal with, or two, you can. Give me a minute, I want to check something kind of quickly. It'll let you go in a couple of minutes, so actually, let me do this a little differently. Oh, it is a lot to look at. New ball. Let's see. This is pretty random what I'm doing, but let's take a look. I think I think this is the second ball project. Jeez, it's pretty slick, right?
Yeah.
It's
pretty neat.
Really. That ball's a little twitchy, really. I want to see why I chose it. I guess I like the fact that the second ball had to move out of the way. I thought it was kind of interesting. So I just got to say, though, you look at this one, right? Like this, he was a very concept-driven guy. That's a little weird, the face at the end. But I love the way the number 8 moves around on the 8 ball. I mean, that looks really challenging to me. But, you know, he drew that whole 8 ball and made it a symbol after. So it has the black circle, the white circle, the number 8 on it. Then he made it a symbol. So it's actually a little easier than it looks. Really do like the pull stick. Simple, you know. So I honestly believe that, you know, some of you are ready to top these and then some, right? But I just want to give you an idea. This is sort of like the baseline of what you want. It's just strange. This one kind of interests me how they're somehow reacting to the air, but it's almost like they got helium going. Like, you know, you just feel like they're not going to come back down. It's kind of interesting. Here's one of my favorites. You know, it's simple, you know, but very clear. I like how this artist wanted to make peace with drawing in this program and found a very simple kind of geometric way to describe the stairwell. It's not really easy to make that ball bounce. She focused really on the first ball, but I have to say this is kind of an easy A. All right. Those of you who are hungry as hell, treat that as a challenge. You know what I mean?
Or tweening, is there a way to make the the trajectory curving was the way you showed it before? Was that the way to curve them or not?
You know, frankly, we don't have the technology yet in this class to make a curve. It's kind of a number of steps, but I promise you to do it very soon, and I expect to do it next week. So, you know, I think you're a good improviser, so you might find a way to fake it with enough keyframes. But what we're going to do is make an invisible track that only you, the artist, could see. So you can make your ball or anything travel on any kind of path. But it's a lot of steps. It involves a specialized kind of layer called classic guide, classic motion guide. So I know that's not a satisfying answer, but it's going to be at least an hour of teaching to share that with you.
Got it.
So, any other questions or comments? Anybody?
No. Mm-mm.
No. So listen, guys, I have to say you're a brave bunch. It's intense. I hope that it's kind of intensity that I know some of you like it because some of you are not afraid to smile. Your generation is famous for hiding smiles. It's like, I'm happy. we don't need that with masks anymore. We could just wear masks all the time. For those of you who actually reveal enthusiasm, right, Rogelio? I appreciate that. quite a bit. I assume you're all filled with joy in your hearts. So anyway, have fun being creative, folks. Good luck with the homework, right? We definitely moved up a big notch today from where we've been. The rest of it was really very techy. You know, what are the basic principles of this program? And now we're really moving into the kind of skills we need to be able to tell a story. No last questions or comments? No? Folks, I will see you all next week. Please come on time. Those of you who, you know, have the best of intentions, and I will also. All right, see you all next week.
All right, till next time.
See you till next time. See you, everybody.
Bye, Professor.
Bye, Professor.
Bye.
Hey, Professor.
Bye, Professor.
Bye. Oh, it's pizza and beer tonight. I'm excited. No work after this. I'm done. It was fun, but I'm done. All right, see you guys. Bye-bye. Hey, Naftali, what a weird adventure you're having.
I honestly don't know, like, what is going on anymore at this point.
Neither do I, because the department did what they said and looked it up, and they had the record of your form, they had the record of the email they sent. So why you didn't get it, I don't know.
I checked my email, the one I'm using right now,
Yep.
and since you told us about the request form on that day, I think it was like a day after or the day on, I have checked my spam, I checked my all the backups of my email, and I can't find it.
Really? So are you not having access to, you know, even though we were told that they used your same, like, Red Warrior?
Yeah. I'm getting, like, every other BMCC email. Like, I got stuff from, like, the chairman, the newsletters, this and that. I'm getting everything else but, like, that.
Weird. And so they're not sending stuff to your BMCC email?
I don't know, because I don't have access to that. I've tried, I'm trying to, try and get access right now.
I think that's your best bet, to put up a fight with that. I know that happens. You know, all kinds of weird stuff happens. You know, the other thing is, you know, the email address for the tech support. I'm sure they could help with the email.
Yeah, I also, emailed them also.
You know,
And
you're keeping your head, you know. I so appreciate what a gentleman you could be, because this has got to be maddening, you know. So I really do appreciate the way you keep your head about it. I just need us to succeed. I don't want this story to end with, and then they gave up. That would just be a bummer. I mean, it's only Class 5, so as rough as it is, we've got 2/3 of the semester left.
Yesterday, I sent another request, the third one. So even though I don't know if they approved it or not, I'm still gonna go to the school. But last time I went, I was told that I can't go in without a certain application or something like that.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Kind of like COVID tracking thing. You know?
I guess.
But you know, the world has changed now that the president had COVID. Did you guys hear about that yet?
Yes, I got an email of it too.
And don't you wonder, how did they catch it, being how careful they are? Oh, I'm recording. I try not to say political things. I just blew it. Sorry, YouTube. Just kidding. Give me a second here. I do want to stop that. Just give me a minute. Give me a second there, guys. There we go.